We call the meeting to order. This is the wastewater treatment plant contingency committee.
The these packages that we can.
Yes. So we have here myself, Earl. Austin's not here yet. Tim is here. Mark Crowley.
Austin is here.
Austin is here. We're missing Donna and Daphne. We have Sumner and Bob Pepperling. And of course, the chairman who controls everything.
That's right. Trouble herself.
That's right.
And you may not recognize her, but it's the same Sharon as last year.
We'll have to talk about that.
Yeah, nobody said anything about my hair, so.
I know. You should put them light it.
It's the same Austin. Well said, Bob.
Okay, first thing on the agenda is the review of minutes. I don't know how many of you actually opened the agenda ahead of time and clicked on the minutes to read them. But
I did.
that's where they were found. And so
Oh, house.
That
That one.
There's one.
You'll put yours there.
Yep.
Let's put Donna in the corner.
Okay, I like the corner. I'm fine.
We can move on to.
Looks like everyone's ready to get started.
There you go. We got plenty of them, Donna.
Yeah.
And would you pass this to her, please?
Thank you.
Yeah,
The minutes in this package.
They are not.
no,
No, they were in the agenda link.
So it sounds like those were approved.
well, sort of. The
Your emotions.
The October 23rd minutes were about the presentation that Aqua Narita made to us down in the city conference room. And so I sent them to Paula Dorn, who was the speaker at the meeting, and asked her to review them. She did, and her responses are in your handout. The last part of the handout.
Mark, that's the one I gave you separate today.
Oh, this one.
Mm-mm.
I had marked up the minute where I thought there was confusion or questions. But
The random notes.
Oh,
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Matches your
Thank
shirt.
you.
Uh-huh.
and
I'm really good.
You can borrow mine. I've got handwritten notes on there.
and rather than revise the minutes, I would like to suggest that we just append this to the minutes. Is that,
I had some concerns with some of her notes on there, because
Yeah.
I went back where she noted and listened to what, and I think she thought we were talking about something else and it was actually regarding another topic. So, but the first three, I agree, that's just, she just put more detail in.
Yeah.
Than what the notes actually said. But the statements were correct, she just added detail. Number 4 for the challenges. Again, I think this statement is true. I think what we were talking about was identify challenges. Based on varied design, flow rates and load. Those changes dictate cost. So I don't think it actually had anything to do with retrofitting what she was talking about here. So I can adjust that to say dictate cost, or
I think what she was trying to say is it's not gonna cost us more
correct.
if we retrofit. In fact, we'll save money.
But it just depends on what we decide to use and not use. That's gonna change the cost.
Right, it will change the cost, but won't,
So we can just reflect that.
okay.
And then number 8 under challenges,
Yeah.
the delay. At the time, we were talking about paying to ship sludge across the United States, and people don't want to do that because it's so costly,
Right.
and that would be the delay.
What did
So it's about shipping, is that what
Mhm.
the note there? So-
Mhm, mhm. But I agree that number one kind of talks about the difference between growing your own and using sludge from another facility.
Yeah.
So growing your own, is that what you said?
For the initial granule.
Well, can
For
we
the
make a
initial.
motion to accept the minutes and add this with a couple of qualifications
We can do that.
that Sharon has identified as number
It was 4 and 8.
Mhm.
being largely true, but
Yeah.
maybe not accepted as fact.
What she was saying was true. It's just, I think she was talking about a different subject at the time. I think we were just crossed up. So it just needs clarification.
Okay,
Okay, do we have a second for that motion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that takes care of the November 23rd. November 6th, any comments? And also November 14th, any comments on those ones? Hearing none. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes of November 6th, 2023 and November 14th, 2020?
so moved. Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Great, that gets us through the first. I think you want to.
I'll send those for the board meeting for the board to approve this meeting.
When is the meeting?
The 24th. Yep. 4 o'clock.
Yeah, what meeting number is this? Do you? I don't either, I've lost track. Okay. Next is continued discussion on aqua and Narita aerobic granules sludge. And yesterday we had a meeting in this very room with some Walcott representatives. And Bob and Austin and Mark participated in that. We sent them a list of questions similar to the questions that Mark had provided to Whitefish. And they provided written answers and then elaborated on them and also provided a number of documents for us to review, which I had a hard time getting. Apparently they sent them December 28th and I didn't get them then, and
did you not get them?
I
got them.
Yeah.
I got them.
Yeah, and I
Even,
think,
I mean, even I got them.
yeah, right. I
Was
figured
that
it
to you,
must have
was
been one
that
of
your
those
personal
things.
email?
Hmm?
Was that to your personal email?
It was for me.
I think, I don't know because I couldn't find
I
it.
don't know if you have a limitation on your email for the size of document. Sometimes it'll reject it and flag it as junk because they think it's spam.
Ah,
So I know a couple of the board members, anytime I try to send a large document, it kicks it back.
Well, this was an odd email, okay, it sort of just opened up and there was what was his name?
Brandon.
Brandon Chowder has shared the document with you. So many of us probably deleted it, but
yeah.
it was there and I found it last night. We sent it to you and you, but for example, you were on it,
I got it.
you got it,
Mhm.
and you were on it.
Did you get it somewhere?
Okay.
am digging. through
You
all
were-
the email.
You were on there,
Right.
but, you know.
Hmm.
Vigilance might have made you send it to cyberspace.
Or wishful, hopeful.
or it's in some other mailbox waiting for me to say it's not spam. But from what you're saying, it wouldn't push
If they
the
got
corporate
it.
account because it was a share rather than the document attached.
Mhm.
Yeah, I got it on my Gmail account,
Oh, okay.
I think. But anyway,
Did Donna get it?
Donna, did you get it?
I'm looking right now. I don't remember seeing it, no.
December 28th.
28?
We can send it out.
Yeah, it should be distributed.
And there's a lot of information in there. That starts with, here's how we do the project. The alternatives we looked at, stuff like that.
Yeah, a lot of it was, there was some videos showing
I have
how
one from
they,
you on December 28th.
how they modified the site to build the new plant and that, you know, that type of information.
Yeah,
Well, tell us about the discuss, this is a video conference, I assume you all did yesterday, is that right?
Yes, yeah, it was very helpful,
Was,
I thought.
I,
You know what we took away the most though?
Huh.
They did a site
Uh-huh.
visit to Germany, or to Ireland.
Ireland, oh, very good.
They actually did how many?
Hmm?
Four
For,
Four site visits?
and
Yeah.
was that expense paid?
yeah, apparently.
Was the
beer paid? Yeah, I'm looking for
I-
volunteers to go on that
Hopefully
I'll
I'll-
babysit.
trip.
I did ask who they sent.
Illinois, so-
Really?
Yeah,
And what was,
nobody on like the public side. It was all like administrative staff.
really?
So they actually sent their consultants.
How, but nothing about the ex officio?
No.
No?
They actually.
Did you lean in on that?
Well,
one?
the one thing we did learn was that they used an engineer that's very familiar with the technology. That when they have 10 or 15 plants, both in operation and in the works, same engineering consultant.
Yeah,
That's doing this implementation at other
And
locations,
did they,
Who's the engineering consultant?
HDR.
Okay.
and were all those applications, this is all in Germany, correct?
No, this
No,
is
Ireland.
US, this
US.
is US. This company, the one that gave the presentation was a mixture of, there was a gentleman that actually runs the Wolcott facility and other facilities. Under the framework of, I forget what their name was.
United Government.
Yes.
Kansas City United Government.
And the other one was the engineer project manager for HDR that implemented this project from
Okay.
start to finish. And so we got to listen to that, and then they gave a very detailed presentation. We were in for 2+ hours.
Wow.
And they talked about how they're, how do you say this? Because they weren't really selling themselves, but they were a kind of a premier vendor when it comes to this technology. For implementing it and designing it.
Designing, yeah.
Because we had lessons.
What they did was they built a two,
Slag.
2 million gallon a day
It was,
plant,
it was all
greenfield
one facility.
site,
So
on a site that they expect to
they
expand.
actually built the site up 20 feet.
And this
Okay.
is for municipal purposes,
Municipal.
it's not a
How much
Right,
dirt
yes,
did that?
industrial application.
So
But they
we-
expect that
we asked, it was a 4-year project.
growth
We
or
asked
other
what the
things
timeline
being
was. They were gonna
shunted that
tell us how
way,
much
that
was
they
site
will
work and how much was
expand it.
actual
Yeah.
construction.
and
To
But
18
they
and.
had, they
Yeah.
took a
To 8, yeah,
aerial
so-
From two, starting with
before
2,
they-
right?
And before,
And-
it used to always flood,
so
and after, it's like about. or
they,
20
the
feet.
first
It's
thing
a
they
sharp-
did was
It's a sharp slope.
fill the land,
And they
whatever
told
was
us that
low.
the
They
road
raised
that
it
goes
17
into it
feet or so. they
floods.
said.
Yeah,
Was it 18
flooding.
feet?
Stay in a floodplain?
It's in a floodplain and
And-
their
On the
existing
North Sea,
facility
where-
has.
But it's not coastal.
It's in
No.
And
Kansas,
to get
Oh,
a
Kansas,
coastal
that is-
permit to
Near-
do that kind of fill is gonna be.
near the Missouri.
Missouri
River.
River
Yeah.
on the Delta.
Yeah.
And
No. not
No.
And
right.
they-
They're in-
I can go see it when I go home next month.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
they said you can, you just gotta let them know.
report back.
But the lot is 13 acres and they only built on a portion of it. And they want to expand to the front and then to the back. So where they have, I'm gonna call it a berm, but where they have their berm now, they're actually going to fill back in to expand a second.
Yeah,
They were gonna add a second, what were they gonna add on the first expansion?
I think
I
they
can't
were just
remember.
double it as their projected thing, but they
Yeah.
said they were thinking about ultimate expansion going all the way to 18 MGD.
On the backside was
Yeah.
the big expansion. It was,
But that filled dirt that I
Wow.
was talking about,
10
it was to
feet, though.
compress the land. Because of
20.
a structural problem with
They brought in
the
20.
existing
it was 20 feet,
material.
right?
It was kind of interesting. that
Isn't it?
I
geotech-
thought it was 17.
At least it was to me.
I think he said it went
Dirt.
20 feet
That it would pressure that
down.
finally,
Stabilize everything.
20 feet to get
the geotech said it was okay to build tanks there.
But anyway, they,
I feel like ping pong in here.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let Bob handle it.
but they. The amazing thing about this was the entire plant from inbound
Mhm.
to sludge end is 250 feet long and 90 feet
90
wide.
feet
90
wide,
feet wide.
Wow.
one building.
Yeah.
Continuous.
Wow.
As they grow
Yeah.
it, it will be.
Bigger.
That's 2 MG,
Yeah.
you said?
That's a
That's-
2.38 is what they had on. They labeled it as a 2, but it was 2.38 is what they said.
That's impressive.
It was
Very impressive.
I mean,
all concrete. I mean,
What are they doing with their sludge?
well,
Same thing we're doing.
Put it on 18-wheeler and ship it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
first they compress it.
Yep.
And then they,
They thicken it, I
Yep.
think is the
Thicken
right
it.
term, because they only go to 4% solids for hauling.
Yep.
So it's still a liquid slurry. It's not a dried sludge.
Okay.
They do not have the drying capacity there. They take it to another one of their treatment plants.
Mhm.
For drying,
finish-
because you
finish it
can't
off.
dry in that space capacity that
No.
you're saying,
That's
two
correct.
fifty by 90, you don't have room for drying.
You could put a belt filter press, but it would add another building right beside it. Not necessarily huge considering, but they don't prefer to do that since they have dewatering facilities at their other several treatment plants.
and so in their facility, they have 3 tanks.
Mhm.
Up in the Rita. And they have a constant flow in and they sort of fill this one. And when they're, and these other 2 are doing something else, and then they fill the next one and start to react the first one. And then they fill the 3rd one, and by that time, this first one is ready, has treated it and is ready to
Settle and discharge.
settle and discharge.
And what's the time span that we're talking about between 1 to 3?
I mean, they showed us a chart that was basically 24 hours, so it's in tank 1 for most of the 24 hours, but that tank is doing filling for 3 or for probably first third of the time, then reacting for like 12 hours and discharging for 1. And
Did they give us any information around the quality of the water coming out?
Yeah, there's
did.
their permit's a
I'll
lot
prefer to
more
mark on
stringent.
that.
Than ours?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They wanted, when we
They-
said our
They
permit.
do go
they
through a
wanted ours.
disc filter, like the one that you saw at Berlin.
Yes.
On that effluent.
They have a common header that runs the bottom. That's why their technology is different. So common header runs the entire length of the process. And then they have side laterals that come out and then they discharge on the bottom versus us discharging on the top. And I think that helped with the settling process because you would have all the oh my gosh, the granulars.
Yeah.
Because they had a video that it was, how long was it? A minute and 30
Yeah,
seconds?
the Settling.
Yeah,
video.
and it was a settling video with the granulars.
Is that real time?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was insane, because you would just see it would just move.
yeah.
Yeah, we could bring some of this stuff up if you want.
Austin, how long would it take to do that same process here? That settling process?
Oh my gosh.
How long would that video be?
Well, it's a
How long?
30-minute settling test, so you put in a liter,
A sieve.
graduated cylinder. It's in the standard test at the treatment plant. They grab a sample of your mixed liquors that are in the oxidation ditch. Take it into the
Yeah.
lab, you set it there for 30 minutes and you see how well it settles. And it gives you an indication of whether you should modify your process slightly to get better settling. To make sure that that clear water is
So if you
going
forward
to
it
the
to me,
effluent.
From the way Austin just described it, it happened several times faster.
Yeah, it's,
Absolutely.
yeah,
You
it's
can
a-
just watch it drop
well,
because of
Whatever,
and the interesting part is how they had the whole thing configured. It was because the overflow, like as everything rose, it would go into the open troughs because that's where they had the algae problem for them,
right.
and then everything would work down towards the end, and then they had the overflow, which was for the, what did they call it? On either side, remember as it went over, they had it was a
Rear.
holding, it was the holding tanks. Oh my gosh, I can't remember it.
The effluent
Yeah,
holding,
yes, on either side.
Oh, the,
well, you know, you fill it, they fill up the tank
Yes,
and it's under aeration.
yeah,
And then they turn the aeration off. And they still pump water into the bottom. And this fast settling creates a clear liquid at the top. And that, as the water's pumped in, raises the level so that it spills over into
Yep.
these effluent launders. And that collects the clear water and takes it to the filter. Then, and in the interim, the other tanks are doing other parts of the procedure, aeration, whatever is necessary. And then they lower that water level
Okay.
slightly.
But Austin has it also.
oh, that's right.
did they talk about, energy savings and?
Yes.
Okay. And
Their annual budget.
Sit down.
The plan,
I'm sitting,
their annual budget, which covers labor, materials, chemicals. You know, the whole bit. 300,000,
how much?
300,000.
for that American.
$2 billion.
And they think they're gonna be able to reduce that
yeah.
because they think
Wow.
they're not gonna need to use alum.
Send it to me.
for,
Well, but that's also Kansas electric prices, right?
Right, this is the.
Well,
thing
what is
I've-
the delta? Let's talk, I mean, that could be,
Say it's 20% higher here.
It's more than that. It's more than that. I'm from Kansas.
well, how is your electricity?
I'm sure it is.
Is it odd?
I talked to my brother and he lives in just a regular size house and his electric bills are never over 70 or 80 bucks, ever.
Yeah.
You know, and he keeps his house at like 70 in the
Really?
70, 72 in the winter and
And winters,
68 in the summer.
and winters are really moderate in Kansas.
Yeah, they are, and the wind doesn't blow.
Except this,
So they got 4 inches of snow yesterday. My daughter lives there.
Now, they were not able to give us their electric usage. They said they don't track that individually. It's for the whole United Government. So I had
Wow.
A
asked,
united government is a combination of different municipalities, a shared thing.
it's Kansas City. But they've got all these different
All their
wastewater
other
treatment
treatment systems.
plants throughout the
plants that
city.
they have.
Yeah.
Okay.
sure, just
Yours,
hit on any of those and those.
it wouldn't load, it didn't like the program.
No, it's not.
They can
Donna,
see
is let's talk about the utility piece for a second, electricity, is that a municipal utility there, or is it a public service, public utility?
I don't
You don't know?
remember. I don't remember.
Okay,
It's Kansas City Power and Light.
okay, well,
Um,
that's, we
It's
can look that up.
privately, isn't that privately owned? I don't think it's a.
Well, it's probably subject to state regulators.
Oh, sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I was gonna say, cause Darren's in Missouri and he told me that what he's forecasting out for his power supply costs is going through the absolute roof. But a lot of that's decision making. It's like the whole decision about NRG. Which is to close the coal fire plant, spend 350 million to build the infrastructure to buy KWH from another coal plant. It's the
That was Kansas City.
So-
Power Line.
So, there were two conversations going on when you were talking about this pile that they built up that's at least 18 feet high. And to me, that's sort of intriguing because although I didn't answer you, I just got to trying to do some of the questions you asked me to do. And that was gonna be the thing I was gonna say. If you were to move to the Greenfield site on the other side of Freeman Highway, within the city limits, you can't really get probably enough elevation without bringing in material, unless you get a permit to really start grabbing soil from a long way away. But what I got thinking about was what development has been built in the last at least 5 years, if not 10 years around here that hasn't involved some major addition of height. And, there's, seems to me it should be possible to do that here just as easily as anywhere else. I'm curious what it costs to put that pile of dirt underneath that building.
Well, they said they thought it was about $17 million.
The total project cost was 37
million.
but they got it down to. It was 37 million, but they had a couple things that they added in.
Yeah.
And then we asked what the site work cost was, because I couldn't even imagine. And they were gonna try and bifurcate it out.
Donna, what is that area? Do you know where this plant is located? Are you familiar with that area?
Yeah, somewhat, yeah.
Why did they have to elevate that many feet above?
Floods.
It's a river.
It is, it's a
Right,
riverbed,
by the river, yeah.
In Missouri, Mississippi, what is
No,
it?
it's
the Columbia.
It's either the Missouri or the Platte, right?
is it the Missouri?
Whatever it is, it's a big
Mississippi.
river.
They
And-
discharge to the tributary, which goes to,
Missouri.
yes.
It's the Missouri River.
Understand, they brought in dirt to the site and made a big pile over the area where they wanted to build these concrete tanks. And
Right.
the reason they did that was because the soils that are originally there
Mhm.
were compressible. So you couldn't just pour concrete tanks on them because it would shift and break.
Right.
So they bring in this soil, they compress the soils below the original soils. Then
Leave it there for a while.
they left it there for a while. Then they excavated it away and built the tanks down at grade.
Oh, see, they actually.
They didn't put the
reused
tanks
fill.
up high. The
Ah.
tanks themselves were high.
Oh, that's
You
cool.
know, this is, you
They
see what I
literally, it
mean?
was like a
So
great
then
big-
they had all this extra dirt that they used around and about to
Create the berm.
create a parking space and a berm and everything else so that there was a dry area for operations.
a great big slow acting earth hammer.
Yeah,
Wow.
That's
And
what it is.
how long did they let this dirt sit before they
I
began?
don't know, I think they said, but I don't recall. It's probably, the geotechs probably want something like in the neighborhood of 3 or 4 months to.
Yeah, okay, but not like 3 or 4 years.
Is that,
No,
No, it took them 2 years to build the plant,
is that pushing water out?
a year and a half. to
I'm not
design.
exactly sure, depends on what the soils are, and I'm not a geotechnical engineer, so I suspect that's what it is.
but they spent of their 35, I'm 57,
Yeah.
they spent 17 just doing that.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And what-
think they
is
were-
this the retail rate or
Moving
is this
dirt
the
here on
Well,
the
that's
east
right.
coast is.
I thought I heard a number.
costly.
Well,
That's right, you wouldn't have that problem.
And, yes, a lot of the developments around here have had a lot of fill, like if you look
Yes.
at Old Town, there's one. That side closest to Kings Highway has like 4 feet of fill in it.
Right.
But they were able to take those fill because they had to put in their ponds are 8, 9 feet deep. So they're able to get their fill from their own site.
Some are, there are
Balanced
a
cut and
number of sites that have brought in
Yeah.
additional.
Right.
Significant volumes of
Right.
dirt.
Are you familiar with the term no net fill?
Mhm.
Can you define that?
So, when plans are submitted for development here, you have to put down how much you're cutting. How much fill, and then what the difference is. That's right on the cover sheet.
Mhm.
And they try and track that at a state level, just to keep, a general idea. Because it's costly to bring in a lot of fill.
Well, and that was where I was headed with the line of questioning here was, I assume there might be a difference in cost between Kansas and Sussex County, Delaware for earth moving and sourcing of the
We
materials.
have very different soils here.
Right.
I mean, I'm assuming
Sand.
that they're trying to compress that and expel the air and get compressible for bearing weight of the tanks and buildings.
Precisely.
We have sand and mixed with clays in our soils. If you're looking at doing something like that, you're looking at pilings. You're looking at pilings over here if you wanted to do something.
I made a quick, rough calculation of how much material you would excavate if you built an aerator plant at the existing site. For instance, in the area of the sludge drying beds. And it's about 3,000 cubic yards of material you could excavate out and put the tank down in and have it up out of the ground high enough to withstand any future flooding. And that material could be used, spread around the site for the construction of other buildings
And access.
and
Access to roads, right?
So how much,
Just so you know.
what kind of volume would that be relative to the volume that was in, I guess, one of the early options in the GHG report, the berm?
It's substantially a smaller amount than building that full berm.
Okay,
Yeah.
but it could
I mean,
help
that-
with the berm, for example.
It would just act as a high area rather than a berm all the way around. You just, where the treatment plant is, you would be able to fill around that and I can't say absolutely.
There's a desire
without
for
a
it.
full design of whether you would have to bring in more material or excavate other areas to get material to create
22.50,
plateaus
14 cents a kilowatt hour.
for buildings, et cetera.
But
What
you're,
was-
but
what was
you're
that?
now talking
12
about
cents a kilowatt hour.
a substantially smaller footprint.
Right, what was the size of that building?
Beyond, yeah.
The new building out there in Walcott?
250
by
by
90.
Wow.
That's less than a half an acre.
Now, does that come with some extra special engineering cost to ram everything into that tiny space? I mean, is there a premium that they paid for that compared to what, we might be able to do if we were to do a greenfield development here?
I do not think so. I mean, other than the hauling in of material that was required for them, which you may not have that problem here. Their concrete tanks would be in the same type of configuration as you would build them here. So that wouldn't be a difference. You'd have an excavation cost here. If you put them down into the ground, to some extent, they're 24 feet tall, so you don't need them to stick up out of the ground 24 feet. You can put it in the ground and make use of that material.
Depends on the site.
Would you hit water pretty quick though?
Yeah,
Yeah, it
that's
would depend.
okay. You can dewater and pour concrete all the time.
So, I mean, without running this out through a calculator, that's like a little more than a half an acre.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. And that's just the tanks, and they had two buildings on each end that is included in that dimension.
Yes.
And so they did build vertically in some regards, which may not be absolutely necessary if they had planned on an 18 MGD treatment plant to fill up their site.
I got you.
Here, if you wanted to, some of those buildings could be separate, with just pipes connecting for whatever is necessary. Without doing a real design and having an engineer do a real design, it's hard
How
to
long
say.
ago was this work done out there in Kansas?
Just went online. It just went online January of 22.
Okay, okay,
So
Been
it's
a year.
all right. And what is around this site in Kansas? Is it just out there by
It's a
itself?
floodplain.
But so there are no other buildings, there are no commercial buildings and
That's
certainly
correct.
no residential areas.
That's correct.
Would they attend our presentation? Would they attend our presentation?
You mean on the 24th?
Yeah.
Probably.
Having someone that's actually done it. That's
You can
What's the
bring up that video.
presentation on the 24th?
whatever the date
For
is.
the,
when
for
they-
the presentation for the committee to the board.
Oh,
is if we'll.
we have until January 31st.
Yeah. I have it on there because I didn't know when we were gonna do it.
And that was January 31st, 2025, as I recall.
Having that kind of horsepower in the reader there as well, I think would be incredibly helpful.
I think
That's a good point.
that's very helpful. If you sort of got this guy Brandon and his operator,
Rick,
That was him, right?
that's him.
Because this is the video of.
Oh, you chalk the lights?
No.
He was up.
Yeah, I did.
There it is.
there's their 2 billion gallon per day plant like that.
That's 250 by 90.
Wyandotte County in northeastern
God.
Kansas is the state's
barn.
smallest county in area, but the fourth largest in
That's what it's
population.
on.
The county shares a unified government with Kansas City, which oversees wastewater treatment for more than 170,000 residents. In the early 2000s, the population of western Wyandotte County was growing rapidly. To support this growth, the unified government purchased a pre-owned package plant and relocated it to the Walcott neighborhood of Kansas City. Although the plant provided sufficient capacity for about 10 years, it was simply not viable as a long-term solution to meet continued growth and future treatment objectives.
One of the big problems we had with the package plant was the fact that we're in the Missouri River floodplain. The package plant was actually installed down at the elevation of the fields. So when the Missouri River would come up, it actually inundated around the package plant, which meant we had electrical reliability issues.
Can't
and
happen
also
here.
access issues getting to it. So when we started looking at the need to expand the capacity here in the Wolcott area, we recognized an opportunity if we did a major capacity upgrade, we could actually take some other pumping facilities offline, which would help reduce our long-term operating costs, which helps us reduce our rate that we have to charge our customers.
Once the decision was made to embark on a long-term improvement project at the Wolcott plant, a number of wastewater treatment technologies were considered, including conventional activated sludge and SBRs. The main drivers in selecting the technology included footprint, increased capacity, the ability to meet future permit requirements, and low cost of ownership.
So as far as the main treatment objectives,
That's what we have to do it.
the package plant that was here before this project was about 200,000 gallons per day. And the growth plan for this area meant that the new facility needed to handle a flow of around 2 million gallons per day. So that's almost a 10 times increase in flow. And then also it needed to meet new treatment standards. There are effluent requirements for nitrogen and phosphorus that this facility is having to treat that the prior package plant didn't.
Biggest driver for us when we were evaluating technologies, and one of the things that really helped us settle on the aerobic granular sludge was the fact that the footprint is so condensed. Because we had to bring in all this fill and raise the elevation so much, it really reduced our construction costs. And also because it's reduced facilities, it also helps reduce our long-term operating costs as well.
Before a technology was selected, the unified government opted for a construction management at risk or CMAR delivery method. This approach offers a number of advantages such as flexibility, fast delivery, and cost transparency.
One of the benefits of the CMAR process is by bringing that contractor entity on board, you're able to go out for early equipment procurement and other items. The aqua narrator process is really the heart of this treatment facility. It represents a large bulk of the equipment operates. And being able to work with the CMAR, procure that equipment and scope early in the project, just after the 30% design milestone, allowed the rest of the facility to be tailored, designed to that process.
So we could really understand what the impacts were going to be, what the footprint was going to be, the layout, looking at 3D models, knowing exactly how it was going to lay out and operate once it was constructed. And we were able to do that in real time. So we were able to understand what the cost impacts would be for construction, also for operation going forward.
These are the pictures of the plant operating.
Yeah.
After extensive evaluation of the options, the unified government selected Aqua Narita aerobic granular sludge technology. This advanced secondary wastewater treatment system from Aqua Aerobic Systems employs a unique three-phase process that's been proven in nearly 100 operating plants.
The water feeds into the plant through the bar screens. We have rotary drum screens, 6 millimeter perforated screens. Then it feeds into our head cell, which is our deep grit system, and it degrits the water flows from the degritter to the reactors. Each reactor gets fed, and as it's being fed, it discharges to the effluent. While that's happening, we have two other reactors that are actually in either an aerate phase or a wait phase. So what they're doing is they're meeting parameters to get desired effluent. After all that process, everything that's discharged from the effluent, we send through a aqua disc filter, which in turn then sends it to our UV system, our ultraviolet system, and then that in itself is discharged to the creek, which discharges to the river. We saw this process and it was very intriguing. It's state of the art, it's cutting edge, and we wanted to bring that to the unified government. We wanted our citizens to be able to
That's the
have that as
operator.
a process that we could be proud of.
It had a number of benefits that it offered the project. One of those was a smaller footprint and also simplification of the
Use the
process.
hands on
Really a
Oh,
site
he is
that
taking
that
it.
was when they were going through and evaluating and scoring these technologies. And obviously, you want to meet your treatment requirements at the lowest dollar possible. And through that evaluation process, AGS not only was the lowest capital cost, it was also the lowest operations and maintenance cost. So it offered the low life cycle cost and then also met those non-economic needs that the owner was looking for.
The Aqua Narita process is intuitive, predictive, and efficient. Intuitive because it knows the parameters we've set and does not move from phase to phase until each parameter is met. Predictive, when we have rain events, it predicts the rain and assesses how much rain we're getting and then shortens the cycles. And efficient, it's a very small footprint. And you go from one end to the other very quickly and everything's taken care of in 3 reactors. If you maintain the probes and keep everything clean and calibrated, the system basically runs itself.
The system.
Polymer usage, we only use about 3 gallons of polymer a day. In our other facilities, in our other processes, we use hundreds of gallons of polymer per day.
But you
We
wouldn't
thicken
think
it up
if
to the
it being
point
new
where we go
construction that
from
you would have combined
less than
flow.
1% solid to a 4% solid, and then we haul that away to our other facility. So we just haul it off. That was the driver
cool.
for not doing dewatering here on this facility.
The Aqua Narita system at the Walcott facility works in tandem with Aquadisc cloth media filtration for downstream polishing. The results have exceeded the plant's expectations in water quality, simplicity, ease of operation, and flexibility.
We started seeding with our conventional activated sludge on January 6th of 2022. We hauled in 180,000 gallons, and within a week, we were already settling at 5 Plymouth Park. A month later, we already had grants.
Our permit limits basically were a 30-45 or a 45 weekly, 30 monthly permit limit for our VOD and TSS. We are actually averaging less than 10 on our effluents on both of those fronts. Ammonia limits, they vary throughout the year. Our lowest limit we have here at this facility is 0.6 milligrams per liter. And we're achieving less than 0.4 consistently across the board. Phosphorus, we have a limit of less than 1 milligram per liter. We're achieving 0.8 on average. We have a nitrogen limit of less than 10. We're averaging less than 2 or right at 2. Performance wise, the plant is doing exactly what it's supposed to do.
So are there environmental variables that play into those efficiencies, those effluent numbers? You know, that make it easier to achieve those numbers there versus here that you can take out of the equation of comparing the technologies?
No, because we had asked the question on if you take into the colder winters, the harsher winters, they had said that they were getting granulars within 30 days.
Yeah.
And it was when they started up, what did they say it was? 6 degrees?
Yeah.
But
That was January
I think
2022.
Sumner's question is, do they have a better flow of
Well, it's the whole thing. It's
Sewage.
change differences in flow, differences in the incoming chemistries. I
So
don't,
my
you know,
opinion that is representative of what you would see here, other than your diurnal, your annual
Seasonal.
variations. And in terms of weather or types of wastewater,
so the influent loadings are kind of the same.
I would say so. Of course, I'll always mention my future worries of having salt water come in, and that's a whole different story, so.
We didn't ask what their flows were. That's the only thing we didn't ask. What they were currently running in.
To get those numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like what their average flow was, even though they built 2 million gallons, I know.
They're running just under 1 million gallons a day.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
I must have said, so yeah. Which would be similar to us because
Yes.
we're not, if you were to take the county flow, because actually Jeff and I were talking about this today. If you take county flow out, what we were at about 500,000 is what we averaged.
You wanna come up and join us?
Yeah, 500,000 to 600,000 over the course of a year, once it averages out.
So it's really a very comparable
Interesting.
situation.
I think it's fair to say, at least. Try this out as a thought experiment, that. You know, when we started out looking for an alternative. You know, what if the deal with the county doesn't exactly work the way it was supposed to a year ago? I think we found one. That could in fact be implemented on the current site. Or elsewhere in Lewes. Not too far away. And Austin's talked about 2 other locations, and I keep talking about one that he doesn't like, but he doesn't mention it. But,
But spin control here.
Which one
Well,
was
in the
that?
presentation,
Well,
right?
Talking about a couple too.
let me finish that sentence. The point is, there's a technology that works,
Mhm.
that's shown in Europe, that's shown in a potentially saline environment, Dublin, Ireland, that would fit here and could be a tool and seems to meet the parameters of lower cost, efficient, manageable, and Austin will get to the issue of manpower and that cost. But it's a very real option that could be configured here. If you didn't want to do a deal with the county, or you wanted, and it's probably better than what we have over here now.
So I don't think ever before have I played this role. But you guys kicked some numbers around at the beginning of this discussion. And I heard 37 million. Now, you know, we go this route, we're on our own. I'm not the budget guy. But I'm assuming it's a lot harder for us to raise $37 million than it is when we're playing. I mean, the unified government in Walcott is working with the whole of Kansas City. There's a lot of capital available when you're doing that. That's not what we have unless we're partnering with somebody else.
I don't think you're talking $37
I
million.
have to check.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
totally,
Because of we'd be building on something that would be there. You know, wouldn't sink into the
They had
ground.
like-
So they spent 17 million on earthwork. Right,
That's my
Right.
recollection.
so.
and I'm assuming in that 37 million was also all the concrete and the metal and everything else.
Right.
You know, I think that
No,
was
it's just bringing
earthwork.
dirt in.
That was just earthwork.
17 million was earthwork, the
Site prep.
37 million included.
So the 20 million was the.
I'm thinking they spent 37, subtract 17,
We're down to 20.
you're in the neighborhood of 20. For a greenfield site where you haven't reused any. That's a lot of money.
We'd have to raise the site too, though.
But that's what, we were talking about that yesterday, and that's where we were going back and forth with properties, because you know what your benchmark is for the size of this plant footprint wise. And so
Right.
how much money do you want to invest raising the elevation of that plant versus finding another facility, and
So-
you'll be able to do that
So
balance.
playing around with the topography,
Mhm.
there's a couple places on the other side of Freeman Highway that would fit that half acre or even acre or 2 acre footprint without having to move. I mean, you want to level the site up, but there's some little humps over there that would actually support that
Well,
at that kind of spatial efficiency.
Right.
well, I think the point is, there's an option that wasn't on the table a year ago.
Right.
That, you know, has some attractive features and could be developed. If the board wanted to spend some, you know, engineering money. To say. Study this and what would it really cost,
So
other than, you know, my guess and Mark's guess and Barbara's guess together.
What was your
so
question?
so
What was your question?
it does seem to get more and more attractive as we learn more about some of these other places where it's going.
Well,
I'm looking forward to hearing the properties you guys were kicking out. I mean, we don't really have that many places where we can put it, where we aren't, as Ro was saying, raising it.
But in the same spot.
Right. I mean, if we go to the other side of Freeman, on the other side of Freeman Highway and that big Generac parcel,
The other thing is-
to me, there's a big question mark about what we could, or if we could do anything over there. If it's not there, I mean, obviously there's been some conversation about the property next on this side of canal, next to the highway. None of them are clear, easy shots, not like going out in the middle of the farm field, away from everywhere, everybody, you know, building where nobody's really looking. We can't do that.
Austin has a suggestion that does that.
Well, that's not that isolated, is it? Didn't
Which-
look to be
Which one?
The one you're talking about out here.
yesterday.
Oh, yeah, that's Tim's piece of property. It's, you know which one I'm talking about? It's the one behind Canary Creek, the development.
Wait a minute, the Canary Creek with the
Development.
townhomes and also the, I
There's,
know you're talking about between that.
You're talking
and
about the
New
parcel
Road,
between New Road,
Oh.
the part that was
Yeah, but
open,
that's-
left open space.
open space,
Oh,
right?
well, technically the canal parcel's open space too. The current location of the wastewater treatment plant.
Well, but I think that plant pre-exists our definition of open space,
Yeah,
right?
But it could be turned into Indian swamp of space.
yeah, you swap it.
So
Yeah.
that's a really, really interesting idea.
yeah.
Again, not in the middle of nowhere. A bunch of people who have gotten very used to being able to look out their back windows and look across that open farm field. You know, no place comes without its
No,
social, political challenges. that way.
Doesn't matter
Yeah.
what you do, somebody is gonna be pissed off.
Right, exactly.
That's your benchmark.
But
So
elevation wise, that's a really intriguing spot.
technically, the property off of Gills Neck Road is a lot higher than the property that we just mentioned.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that would represent a savings as far as site preparation, I assume. The
Wait,
fact that the Gills Neck Road property is higher, you didn't have to do all that, you know, dirt work.
and then
Right.
depending on soil composition, but I already have the borings. Cause we're doing the borings for the canal crossing,
Oh, okay.
and I'm getting ready to bore a pipe underneath there already. for the
We
canal
haven't done
crossing,
any
but-
borings over there off of New Road, have we? On that parcel, but.
No,
no, you're right, though. The challenge will actually be elevation. It's not like,
yeah, there's not,
but it's drier than where we are now.
yeah,
But again, I mean, there are all these different variables that are spinning around, right? Depending on where you go, you may have to configure the geometry of the site. I'm assuming there is flexibility with how square or long and narrow you make.
There is some, yeah. I'm sure they have configurations that help in the settling part of, that they would like to rely on. But it sure can be managed slightly.
Let me throw another factor out for you. How many years, what's the life expectancy of this plant? Of a new plant, what would it be? How many years are we trying to get out of it?
Are you talking like a brand new plant? If you were to
Well,
build
you're-
a n- like this, you were to build this,
We're building new,
Yes.
something would be built new,
Yeah.
right? So how many years are we thinking?
you get 40 to 50 years. I mean, you're still gonna have your R&M on your equipment because they were already planning it.
Right.
And what they did is when they built their plant, they procured items as shelf items,
Right.
certain pumps, and they gave us examples of what they would do different. Like they had a 5/8 hose up top or a 3/4 inch hose up top.
Use a fire
For-
hose instead.
Yeah,
Things
they
like
said
that.
put a fire hose on it because that was something they learned. They put an 1.5 inch service up.
You got 2 pumps on the disc filter. He said I should have had one on the shelf also so that you can have an immediate switch out when you're repairing the one that failed, those types of things.
But they got, and then they have all of their valves throughout the whole facility are automated,
Yeah,
but they all have bypasses. So they all have manual valves that are tied in. So if they fail, you can go back and do a manual valve and then and on the one side, all the pipes are interconnected. So once you shut, it is very intriguing how they have that whole design.
you could run 2 reactors while
Yes.
one's being worked on, things like that.
Tim, did you have more insights on what you were asking about 20, 40 versus 50 years kind of thing?
No, I'm just trying to figure out what kind of lifespan we're expecting from this plant. And
Your borrowing is usually for 30 years, is my right?
You do 20 or 30.
You can-
20 or 30, okay.
When did our plant go in?
Which part of it?
well, the one with the SBRs went in
2008.
18, yeah, okay, 14.
2008.
When did
Finished
the
in
ditches
2008.
go in?
Oh my God.
What?
Those are
Ditches.
40 plus
Yeah,
years. I'm
right.
thinking they're probably 70s or 80s.
Well, and when does the work on the headworks that is already planned, when does that start?
April.
Of this
Equipment's
year?
ordered, yeah, April, it'll be installed.
And that was how much of an investment to keep up the maintenance?
1.75, and then we took out a supplemental, but the supplemental was, we don't know where it's gonna land yet. Just because we thought we were gonna have to put a lot of money into the EQ tank. And there's a solution that's coming to fruition that may not be the original thought of like $250,000, which a lot plays into this and where it's gonna be.
Has the borrowing on the existing plant
2027.
2027?
Yep.
That's interesting.
It would be about the time that we would start on a new one.
Yeah.
wouldn't it?
So the
Sounds like
borrowing
one.
on the new one was equivalent to the cost of the borrowing presently, then the change to the users would not be.
Right, it'd be a wash.
Yeah, your debt service.
Yeah, the debt.
Their equipment was a lot different than ours. Like we have a 5 mil and a 2 mil screen. For their system, they only needed a 6 mil screen. And we have, ours is basically a band screen and theirs is just a,
Rotary drum.
yeah. So their equipment's a little bit more simplified. I mean, they basically caveated and said their equipment's a little bit more simplified, but it's a lot of automation. Which we have a lot of automation, but you have membranes that take an extra set of care and maintenance. You have 2 sets of screens. So you kind of,
With their simpler system, they're achieving excellent
Equivalent.
results.
Yes,
Yeah.
Right,
that's right.
And it sounded like it was a simplified process, easier to run.
it's just newer to the States. That was because the operator spoke specifically to, there were certain operators that this is how they always ran a plant. And he said, you can't run this plant like a normal SBR plant. It's a different plant and it's supposed to be run differently. And he goes, if you can get over that hump, it's easy. Cause what did he say? They dedicate 2 operators there 24/7 essentially. And then they rotate.
Yeah, one operator, 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. The second one 4 days a week.
Yeah.
And then they bring in technicians from time to time to
They got,
work on the instrumentation.
yeah, 10 operators that
Yeah.
rotate through 4 plants. I think it's 4 plants.
Yeah.
That cycle through, and then they have a whole nother team that does like their R&M, so they have like electronics and pump crew.
Yeah.
That they cycle through too. And-
170,000 people. Was the number.
Customer base.
Yeah,
For that, that's served by that
So-
plant. I
So,
think.
no, not by that
Yeah.
plant. That's
It's the
one of
whole-
the pile that's rotating around. Uh,
Oh, okay.
So how many
My-
people
my-
do we need?
yeah,
I think you would, I think, what does the state put a number on the number that you need? I said that twice, but a number on the number of operators you need at that plant?
For the current plant, the state came in. The previous contractor and said that they were understaffed for the gallons that the plant was doing. It said that this plant at that size should be 6 operators.
Well,
Now, whether they would change that with the treatment process or not, I don't know.
Yeah,
yeah.
you gotta look at the history of it too, because the history shows. They had 2 people at that plant all the time, and then you had the 2019 incident, and so the state would tell you to put more operators
I
in.
will
As if
say
that
though,
was a
if you look
solution.
At a plant like Selbyville, the town of Selbyville, which is just a traditional plant and does roughly the same quantity of water, they also have 6 people on staff.
That do various things, so you would
They
have,
6 full-time people.
yeah,
so I had the
Are
impression
these
from,
operators all at the same class?
no, you can have variable. You can have 4s, 2s, 1s.
Okay, got it.
Hey, just one more question for you.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Are some of those still, is it still 24-hour operation?
Oh, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
they
7 days.
just go home and the plant runs.
Yeah. If that was your question.
Yeah, just, is someone always there?
No,
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 They're able to monitor remote.
correct.
That's what they're doing.
That's what that instrumentation, intensive instrumentation does for them.
Mhm.
And so it's a matter of maintaining that instrumentation so that they can go home and take a
Yeah,
nap.
connectivity, right? So, yeah.
you had a question.
Well, I'm sure that our manning would be higher than the 2. You know,
Yeah,
I mean. You end up with extra people just because. The 2 need vacations and the 2 need medical leave. And-
So I
We
got,
also
I got-
have a myriad of pump stations that
Yeah,
Right.
and, you know,
those people are very good at helping maintain the
That
pumps and
distribution
whatever at
system.
the plant as well.
collection.
I've always had the impression from my limited understanding of the operations, like, I guess what you're doing all the time. This plant makes it a lot more difficult, or at least a little more difficult, to find qualified operators to run the plant, because it's not a conventional plant.
Yeah.
And that's why we contract with somebody from far away to do this, I assume. I'm assuming from some of the things that either I've heard or read, that although this is a different technology, it's still fundamentally the same process that most operators understand.
so we had asked another question, which was the support that the I'm just gonna say the utility authority had during this process and then continuing on. And they had said that they pick up a phone and they get an answer 24/7, 365. If they got a question, they pick up the phone and they answer right away.
And
Is that an
yeah,
extra fee to get
Nope.
that?
Nope.
no, it's.
It just comes with the technology.
Correct.
And how long does that last?
They've had it in operation and it's never been a problem. And they
Same
still
kind
hold
of
weekly.
response from, that we got
Yeah.
from.
and that's what they're calling Aqua.
Yep, and they
Right.
still meet monthly. Even though the
Aqua
plant's been in
aerobics is there.
operation.
That's
Excellent.
always been my history with aqua aerobics too, and all the treatment plants I designed using their equipment, they're just there.
and
They want
Mark,
to keep their name good.
Mark did talk to another. Plant at Idaho Springs.
Yeah,
Whitefish, wasn't
that whitefish.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Montana.
I'm
it?
sorry.
Whitefish is
Something
Montana.
from
I know Springs is Colorado, yeah.
No, the one I think it was whitefish.
It was whitefish.
And
And
you talked to Alabama way back when.
Foley, yeah,
Foley,
Foley,
yeah.
same thing. They told, when we had asked, they said they visited the other plant in Kansas.
right,
They visited Foley.
the one at the aqua aerobics manufacturing site,
Yep,
that's the one in Kansas.
Rockport.
and
I
then
mean, in
Rockford.
Illinois.
and then they did Foley.
Yeah.
And then, did they do the one in Colorado, or did they go to Ireland after that?
They did Ireland and London.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
did two over there.
Yeah.
Before they selected.
Yeah.
So they were actually going, flying around, traveling to these different sites. It's just,
Yeah, they
No.
basically said you
Aqua takes them there so that. you can
$37 million investment.
Prove the,
huh,
And
I'm gonna
then,
get to the old country yet.
well, and when it was, when they bid it, they actually put a different, what was it? A different screen at the end. The filters at the end. Remember, they said that Aqua came in with such a great price because they wanted to have their
Oh, yes.
equipment
Yes.
instead of, because when HDR originally did it, they didn't put Aqua. What were the,
Aquadisc.
yeah, the Aqua discs. They didn't originally quote it with the Aqua disc.
oh,
And then they came in and said, no, you need to put Aqua disc because everything else is Aqua.
But they also said they made, and I don't know what they were, changes as a result of their trips
Mm,
Yeah,
to London and.
to reflect
Yeah.
that, but they-
lessons learned.
Changes in designs.
because, and that's what it was. They selected HDR, so they took HDR on the trip, and then they went to the type of contract that they were going with.
Yeah,
They took-
construction management.
They took their construction company on that trip,
Yeah,
Right,
and then they took their staff on that trip.
Wow.
yeah.
and you, and in effect, Aqua does that. They-
Yeah.
They handle all the costs for something like that.
Very nice.
I was surprised to hear that there is another company entering as competition, Parkson.
Clarkson is
Yeah.
getting into the business.
Yeah.
and Clarkson and Aqua Aerobics have been like this
Yeah.
forever.
Did, when you spoke to the people from Wolcott, did they describe any kind of resistance that when this Aqua Nerita idea was developed and suggested as the solution, did they run into any kind of opposition within the rank and file, the people who either work for the organization, this United,
Didn't get that impression.
I mean,
Seemed like they were kind of gung ho on, let's do it. This is sustainable. This is,
so there was no one there who was advocating, like, we've never seen this kind of technology before, it hasn't been proven in, it's not, it's.
I think after the
that-
trips to the different facilities, that probably went by the wayside.
Okay.
And
Okay.
they said,
They had 4 or 5, maybe 6 different alternatives for
they looked at.
how to get their treatment
Yeah.
done at that place.
I see.
And they had capital cost, operating cost, and,
site
and
constraints.
multiplied operating cost times 20 and.
They
Sure.
may not give it to us, but if we could get some, glimpse into how they did that process and how the management of it.
Well, some of that is in that email.
The big run from Montana gets into it pretty extensively.
And then they had mentioned that the previous head of all utilities, I don't think he's there anymore.
Mm.
He was partial to this technology. And so that played a factor
Does he
into
work
it.
for Norita now?
No, I don't think so. It's a good question.
Semi-retirement.
Yeah, and they landed on it. And like, I asked the question if they took the decision makers theoretically. And they didn't take, the people at Wolcott did not take like their board members or whoever's gonna make the final decision.
So if you look at the technology that Hans would typically be using
Mhm.
over at Wolf Neck, and you had to make a decision, which one would you go with? Would you go with Hans, his current process, or would you look to do Narita?
That's a good question.
You're next.
If the effluent is being irrigated, it does not have to be polished as greatly as the effluent for discharge. As a matter of fact, it's probably better if it's not quite as good because it's an excellent nutrient source for growing crops or trees.
Hmm.
You still want it to be, clean, but. So if he is sticking with irrigation there, I would I would look closely at the cost of operating to being placed there, but also I would look at using an intermittent lagoon, like a batch reactor out of one of the lagoons where you grow microorganisms similar to this, not with the granules, but like an activated sludge plant like you have at your site, but in a lagoon, and turn it off every once in a while and take the clear water and put it in to a holding lagoon for irrigation. Then turn the air back on again. It's a very simple process. You know, and because the lagoons are so big, the water can continuously flow into that one lagoon that is acting as an activated sludge treatment system. While it goes quiescent, water's coming in way the heck over here, and several hundred feet away, you're taking clean effluent and putting it into the next lagoon for ultimate irrigation processes. And if you wanted to filter that water, God forbid that you discharge it into the ocean, then you could take that water and put it through a disc filter very simply and really polish it. So that would be a very low cost alternative, while Aqua Narita would be more expensive. Then you talk about which produces the most sludge, because that's, as I've said before, is 55% of the budget. And both of those would probably produce the same. You'd have to deal with sludge in the same way, whether you thickened it there, whether you dewatered it there, whether you pump it and haul it, you know, those types of issues, I think would be similar in either case. So the least expensive to construct would be, in my opinion, I've done one once before, is turn an existing lagoon system into a batch reactor.
But isn't the whole purpose of this is that we wanted to eliminate the storage that could be impacted by a storm event?
You mean at Wolf Neck?
Or even here. I mean, if we continue with the SBR system here, I mean, would the lagoons be on site?
Oh, no, I am not recommending a lagoon system
Okay.
here.
Okay.
I would
So
say
you'd have to
Aqua
pump- you
Narita
would
here
have to-
would be the
you would have
correct
to-
thing to do.
You would have to take
At
everything
Wolf-
elsewhere.
At Wolf Neck, if they were going to do something,
Okay,
and I'm not sure, I think he's thinking about putting in a oxidation ditch system. And I'm not 100% sure what his plans were. It wasn't written in the report,
Well,
what
with
type
Hans-
of treatment system they were going to put in
with
there.
Hans leaving, does anybody have any idea if his limitations of thoughts and visions are going to hold, or if there's gonna be a new,
No, I think it'll hold.
oh, you do?
What about if you had an ocean outfall?
I think it would
Ocean
be
outfall,
And you're at Wolf Neck.
like through
at Wolf
retirement.
Neck,
Like once he
What
retires, I
technology
think he already has
I would probably use
his
the Aqua Narita system.
his
It's high
4-year
quality,
use
it's
from
awesome.
land as part of that project.
It's
If it proceeds forward.
Okay.
Kind of flip that on its head.
fair,
From everything you've said so far about Wolf Neck and what you would do and irrigation, it seems like the system at Wolf Neck right now works really well, given that the effluent is ultimately going into irrigation and further nutrient reduction in the.
With one caveat, I would agree with that. Their problems right now are wintertime storage.
Right.
And the reason for that is because they use center pivot irrigators. It's a mechanical situation. It's not a treatment situation. Because they have center pivots as their method of irrigation. In the wintertime, they have to turn them off. They have to drain the oil
Because of
all
because
of
of
the
the freezing
gears
potential.
because of freezing potential. And so in most instances, there's a week of nice weather where you could irrigate. But they're not gonna go all the way back and gear them all up again. They're not gonna do that. So if you had solid set irrigation.
What is your
Pipes,
goal
sprinklers
as far
all
as
over that
presenting
field
this?
rather
Are you
than
gonna
that
do
are
a
pivots that are
presentation
pumped
at a board
Probably
meeting? Is
get
this gonna
central
be a
locations.
report?
All you have to do is push a button and water gets out.
Here's I'm
They
going to
would
do
not
a
be happy to
presentation at the
pump.
board meeting, and
They would be able to
there will be a
irrigate
report.
all of their
Is that
wastewater and not
slated
discharge.
for the January 24th meeting, or you're looking at February?
Archaeological.
Or a special.
They were
Yeah,
also
I
gonna
don't
go
know.
that route, weren't they?
I don't know.
I don't know.
That
the
was-
answer to that.
'Cause they were gonna
I
have to
think
reconfigure the irrigation.
I
Yeah.
know that Hans said that he'd like to go to
Yeah,
solid
I-
set irrigation and trees.
I think
Come on, Tim.
Sorry. I just think for the amount of time and effort that
Maintains
this
open space.
committee has put in. and the
Refeeds
substance of
water
this,
to the groundwater.
The topic. It
Subsides.
seems to me that a special meeting would be appropriate for something like this, where a meeting would be scheduled. And it would be for the sole purpose of a report out about from the subcommittee. To the board,
But that has
Yeah.
not been scheduled.
as far as I know.
That's the issue, he's gonna put on the calendar.
Yeah.
As late as possible.
And I mean,
So,
I mean, I don't know how the rest of you all think, but that's just the way I think about that. So
So-
they get, the members of the board, everyone can focus on one topic during that meeting rather than what's next, the
Yeah.
agenda.
Yeah. Okay, I
This is
was just
important.
curious what the
I mean,
goal
this is a
was.
weighted subject and it's probably very impactful.
Yeah,
I like to think so.
in your handout,
You all have done a great job.
And we talked.
Bob put together the start of a presentation that I could give to the board.
call it a target.
That's right, yeah. So, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate that Daphne is helping me with the actual written report, and I also appreciate Mark helping with, thoughts on if we keep on site. That, that's been.
I know it's a big if, but just in case.
so to all the conversations happened over the last half an hour. What I heard was a bunch of different sort of pieces of a decision matrix. What are the criteria for the decision, right? We talked about.
They actually had theirs up there.
Right, space efficiency, meeting the limits, getting out of the floodplain, yada, yada. I guess in the back of my mind during all that conversation, I'm thinking, it sounds like from what you said, Austin. The management kind of bought into this, they understood it and they embraced it and they went forward with it. I don't get the impression that this board is quite so keen on this. And I mean, we saw that from the very get-go, from the first meeting when this committee was formed. And I'm just wondering, is there an established clear set of decision criteria in place against which we can measure this?
It's one question. You're either in the operations business or you're out of the operations business.
And
If you can answer that question, then you can proceed with any criteria you want. Until you answer that question.
And that's where I agree with that 90%, but I do think there's that 10% thing is this something that the county should do? Which is the other thing, utilizing this kind of technology, which is why I asked those questions. Because if I look at my criteria, it's always been the same since that first pitch we had. Number one is safety. I don't want to see BB Hospital go down because our wastewater treatment plant got knocked over. To me, that's the number one thing. The next piece that I have is the environment. And that's the water going out into the different areas. And then third and last, but pretty important, it's cost for the customers.
Right, and that's what,
Any one of those can blow any one of the other ones out.
so it's in that third category that I'm spending more of my time right now. If the operator question could be greatly reduced by embracing a different technology that weren't so expensive. Might the operator option be more palatable?
It's all of it's on the table. And the way that I looked at it, and this is my opinion, is that the board started this conversation. This whole conversation started because we signed a mitigation or a mutual aid agreement with Sussex County. And we had the discussion of when that oh shit moment happens, what do we do? And there isn't an answer. If pump station 4 goes down, there's not a solution other than you're pumping from pump station 4. What we had said was, what if there's a pipe that went from Station 4 back to the county? Then that sparked up a more holistic approach to this discussion. When we started with GHD, the option was, do you build a 20-foot berm to do essentially what these guys are doing and kind of raise yourself up out of the floodplain, or do you relocate? The relocation piece was, the assumption was technology, and they used the basic technology of you need 20 acres for a plant. This is the caveat of 20 acres for a plant, because if sludge handling is off the table, and it still could be on the table on 3.5 acres, but if it's off the table and you're sending just liquid, then you could even go smaller. And that's where Barbara came in and said, look, you may not need to go 5 miles west.
Right.
You may be able to keep it in. And then you started looking at sites. My opinion is I wouldn't invest this much money into the current site, just because of where the data is showing. The article that just was posted that talked about subsidence all the way up to Baltimore. So to me, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to find a site that makes more sense from a height perspective. That's my opinion.
But I think
Range a
that,
little higher.
Yeah.
Right, right.
There's also,
What elevation is this site at? Sorry.
6.
It's at
Ish.
6.
5 on some parts, 6 on some parts.
And-
See, and if I looked at elevations also, and I looked within the city and county land or state land, and I mean, you might get to elevation 10. Is it worth buying new property, or just raise this one?
that's a question I had in my mind as I was looking around. I mean,
Yeah.
my biggest problem with the whole elevation, finding suitable sites is all about footprint, right? If you're looking at 5 acres, knocks out a lot.
Yeah.
Land. If you're looking at 3 acres, there's be more parcels. If you're looking at an acre, or I don't know what it would be, given what we just heard, what we just saw with that Walcott site, and you add out all the other components, and what's the minimum configuration? If you were to build a green field right now on higher ground to meet our needs for the next number of decades, what would the smallest footprint be?
But not to play devil's advocate, but if DPW is gonna buy land, does DPW wanna also put other things on new property? Or is it just gonna be a wastewater treatment plant? I mean, DPW has a lot of services that they provide.
Good point.
Brewery.
Right.
Utilizing the effluent water.
Home brew. Yeah, that's a very organic
There's
application.
also-
Well, it's like many of these, I mean, again. Each property where you might put some new greenfield thing comes with their own opportunities and constraints.
Yes.
yes.
You asked me to look into the Denrec parcel. I think the bigger the footprint, the bigger the lift to make it happen. The more we can tuck ourselves in, maybe it's not possible with the switch treatment plant, but when you start adding on a whole bunch of other
Right,
operations.
but
it might
if
get
you just
tricky.
need an acre somewhere,
Right,
Yeah.
and you could possibly get an acre somewhere and only have to
I think
raise
you-
it a foot or two.
I think you want to expect it to be more than an acre. So the acre for the tank itself, yes,
Yeah,
but
part of it.
you've got,
They use.
you've got to drive up to it. You've got-
They disturb.
You gotta have a garage.
What do you think?
Their entire burr,
I'm guessing that this process,
but they told us that.
be comfortable with
Road,
like
they
2.5.
went to Wilcox, just did the same thing.
Now,
This,
also, you
floods.
need to remember, and I
Yeah.
can't remind you,
So they did not
you're
solve that.
producing sludge, and sludge stinks.
And sludge
If you
needs
don't, if
trucks.
you're not careful with it, it doesn't have to stink, it can be controlled, but it's just something that
From time to
You
time.
want- it can, that's exactly right.
So it's a question.
And also, you've got to get the sewage there. So if, let's say, we're looking at the plot of land that is on Gill's Neck, it's right next to where the bridge used to be.
So.
That's a 3 acre
6,
site,
4.
be perfect for a sewage treatment plant, be great,
The
but
other one
you're gonna have to get the
was-
wastewater from the beach side there.
So you have a 4.
You're gonna have to
Really,
turn pump
12
station
to
4
13.
around and get it to come there.
And where is that?
That's directly across.
So,
This
you
is the
know,
one where
that's a big
I
expense.
reached out because I
that
wanted to know.
Isn't
if you were to- if
overwhelming
you were to base it
compared to
on
the expenses we're talking about
say
certainly,
you're
but
gonna figure out
it's an expense that you wouldn't have if you used the existing site.
Mm-hmm.
The existing site,
would
of
they
course,
do
has
that
its other
permit, would
major
they bring that
There's
as-
another,
fallacies.
there's another
Overdo it.
possibility, but kind of throwing
Meaning, would you have to
a
do
wrench
it
in the
last?
works.
Oh, I know.
If we think
That's,
about
that's
the
a
fact
2-year
that
project right there.
with sea level
Not three.
rise, there will be fewer people
Then
over
I basically
time
said
over
you
on
may have
the
to do some
beach
parts
side of
that
town.
I didn't think you would have.
What about leaving the existing plant there and talking about building a smaller plant over on the city side of the canal and gradually starting to shift over there,
Migrate over.
as the population on the
Mhm.
beach side drops.
Sinks.
Sinks,
Yeah,
yes,
we-
literally.
Which would be kind of like what they're doing at Wolcott, right? Is they're growing it, right?
Yeah,
They built 2 million and they want
Right.
the
Up to
facility to
18.
be 18, yeah.
I think
And that's-
I've been away from this long enough. I'm just seeing this really
Site
differently.
Prepared.
I
right.
love your
It's-
thinking.
The total site is like, I think it's
Uh,
80
but-
something acres.
Mm.
But there are.
Having interacted, and
It's-
Bob can
it's just-
relate to what I'm about to say, having interacted with that beach
It's wet.
community for
It's wet.
a number of years, having been a member of that beach community for a while. They're not going away anytime soon. It'll be a long time before that substantially subsides.
100 years. And the city's already said they can raise their buildings and I assume.
Right.
it's-
I mean, we talk about that, but I
Yeah.
don't know. What that would really look like and when that would happen. It'll be a long time.
But that goes into the capacity discussion. So
yes,
when,
yeah.
when we sat down and we used to come up with the 1.75, there was a study done by GMB in 2015. That number was based off 300 gallons per day and it landed at like 1.89 total build out. If you were to back it off to 250, it puts you at about 1.64.
Was it 1.89
Yeah,
and then 250?
yeah, and it was based off of 6,200, I think it was like 6,200 EDUs total build out.
What
But
was the
then
number?
6,200.
And where are
roughly.
we now? EDU.
Current, I would be in the 3,500 to 4,000.
Oh, what?
But what's been.
Where are those all coming from? Where's all,
That-
where, I mean,
That's total. That's like existing. That's like, that's not new. That's not 6,000 more new.
no, but that's a little less than doubling of what we have in place now. You said, what was the first number? 3,700?
Yeah, you're probably right around 4. And you figure you still have, you have large tracks because our service territory goes all the way out to Old Orchard. So
Even
every
west.
development out to Old
Right.
Orchard is.
Right.
Abandoned
Black Oak,
obligation.
And,
The Hercules Farm,
right,
800 acres.
right,
Either way, yeah,
right.
that's all
And
included.
and I'm assuming the
The Arte Grande,
piece behind,
Miller Farm.
the piece behind.
keep it-
Sell it.
Yeah.
Sell those.
Pizzeria.
That's not the Miller. Farm.
Just canal side of
Seriously.
the lodge. Warrington property.
Yes, Warrenton and Plummer is in there.
Plumber, okay, so,
Plummer and Warrenton are back to back,
okay,
Side by side, right? Yeah.
all right,
plus the state park.
so,
'Cause the
so,
State park is another 120,000 gallons a day on full build out. And that was never included in the 2015. So if your math works out, if you do 250 gallons per day at 6,200 EDUs, it's 1.64, factor in another 120,000 for the state park, and you land at 1.745 million, which is where you get 1.75 million. The question similar to what Tim brought up is, if you can back that number down for however you may do it, but if you can back the number down to 1.25, your footprint's now gonna change, your sizing is gonna change.
How could you back that down with the growth that we're looking at though?
Yeah,
And,
Most-
and the 2015 study, did it anticipate the growth that we've had here?
Tim made the comment, which is you relinquish the rights to those parcels.
whoa,
So
well,
they're
that's
not
the,
yours.
You can sell that.
oh, you're
Right,
saying
sell the
service
rights.
area wise?
Yeah.
Okay,
This,
Yeah.
this is where do you understand that piece of it? I don't mean to insult your intelligence because that's not my intention. The rights or the obligations to provide utility service to these outstanding parcels, undeveloped parcels, have been assigned or I guess it's the right word, is
Sign.
assigned,
Yeah.
Uh, to the BPW. So on the books, it's an obligation, an opportunity for them to grow their business into those undeveloped sites.
Okay.
And so what I have suggested, and I've spoken to my friend Earl about this, and I think also my friend Sumner, is the idea that, you know, if there's not a business case for the BPW to expand their network into the county, then sell those rights and sell them to other providers. You know,
And the reason you have
be
the
free
area
of the
that does
obligation.
is because you've got to have a unified area that you know what you're serving.
Right.
But you do have the ability to chisel pieces of those off. So
Right.
someone can take over, sell them.
And sell them off.
And you're right, that's the only way to do it. We've never been successful negotiating outside our boundaries on reducing densities. To your point, you know, the county's gonna keep.
That ship sailed.
Yeah.
The county's gonna keep on developing and will continue to increase the densities.
Well, and to go along with that, there's a majority of that service territory that's left undeveloped that resides in the county.
Right,
Right.
that's where I was headed.
That's right.
So unless you start shaving the size of the CPCN,
And when I looked at it to try and come up with an EDU number on some of those parcels, the way that I looked at it is like 20% open space and four EDUs per acre.
20%
probably
open space,
30%.
I don't know if 20% is the right number.
And I have no idea because it's gonna change. I mean, you
Right.
could go after a zoning, it's no different than in 2015 when they went after 350,000 square feet of commercial space
Commercial.
right there on the corner of Gills Neck. They landed on 75, but now you have 75, and now you have the application on the backside for the villages, and then you have Mitchell's Corner on the other side. Then you got the Mitchell's Corner commercial. then you got
Mitchell's Corner is, 8 acre lots.
Two,
I know, I have the plans on my desk.
209, yeah.
And it's like 350 units.
Oh, yeah.
As far,
Townhomes.
Very high density on that parcel.
And you said acre lots?
it's eighth of an
Eighth
acre
of an
lots.
acre.
Right.
I thought
Right.
you said acre lots, like
No,
what?
it's all, and it's all townhouses.
Yeah.
Well, wasn't that one of these places where they stacked the zoning? They were, never mind.
I mean, like mixed use? Is that what you're
Well,
thinking of?
Never mind, never mind.
Okay.
Anyway, the densities, the point is,
question for
the
the board.
densities keep on increasing.
Oh, yeah.
We
That's-
can't use today's densities and assume that whenever the property gets developed in 15 years, it will still be half acre zoning.
Well, and I don't think that we can use 2015 report numbers. Just because of what's happened in Sussex County.
Mhm.
Unless we do something about this.
What's the present connection fee?
Don't
For-
open up
for
that
sewer?
one, Mark.
For sewer?
Yeah.
Depends on where you're at. There's 13.
It probably depends on what
Thir-
developer you are.
13. It goes from $1,490 to I think 44. But I would tell you that the average is like a 2,540 number.
How does that compare to the
25,
county's
wasn't it?
connection fees?
I actually did a whole report on
Wait
this.
a minute, how can you, very well done, by the way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's hyperlinked. It tells you the definition of it, and it ranges anywhere from $8,300 to
That's all I need to hear.
$1,490.
1,400 to 14,000.
14, but the low end in that report is
1400.
like 1,400.
What,
and the
what,
high end
what
is
creates?
Yeah, what's
what's
the
the
variable?
multiplier? I mean, why is it vary?
That I looked at it, all the municipalities, all local municipalities, mostly Sussex. And that is straight from their website. It's hyperlinked. You can go directly.
Yeah,
to
but
their
what
website.
about for the BPW?
Oh, on our side?
Yeah, your side. It's a fixed one, isn't it?
When it was established, they looked at impact fee areas based off the number of EDUs in those areas.
Right?
So, New Road Corridor has the most EDUs in town because
Okay.
you have everything going. It is the cheapest EDU count
Okay.
at 1,490, but it's also the farthest away.
Mistake number one. Sorry,
Yeah,
but
where is
mistake number one.
Where
Well,
are the 4,400?
You took, you discounted the most expensive piece of the system.
Random, yeah. random parts.
random.
Yeah, they're random.
I'm just,
If you go on our website, you can see-
you talk about these growth possibilities
Sharon's
and everything. I'm just wondering what kind of money they're gonna
Come on,
generate.
Sharon, pull it up.
Wow. All right,
I have another question. Change the subject for a moment.
Oh,
Looking at the size of the footprint we need.
I'm
This
sorry,
would fit
25
easily
was the highest. They eliminated 4,900.
in the park where there's currently the rapid infiltration beds.
all right, say that again.
Big rates.
Oh, the state park?
Scroll down,
Cape Henlopen,
Okay,
and they
scroll.
want,
right there.
they
Sewer.
want in our system, well, they've got a location that's already
Yeah, click.
sewage treatment. We could put a plant there, that is very high up,
Hmm. So just reappropriate that site.
yeah,
As part of connecting to the park
right,
and taking them over, we'd like to use their land.
yeah. The only problem is where do you discharge to?
Ocean.
Well, there's the ocean on the other side of that,
Put it into the
There's
same.
that.
right?
Big
Yeah.
EIS study.
Yeah, yeah,
And the canal.
And the
existing
canal.
Permit.
yeah, yeah, there, I mean. That is
They're
about
here
as high
for
as you're
some-
gonna get.
You're gonna need a boat to get there in the future, though. You're gonna come over
Can I find
the
that?
Freeman Bridge and go underwater.
Yeah,
Yeah.
see where you can, and it's kind of hodgepodge, but New Road, they have a whole impact fee area. It's 1,092 EUs. And that's where you get the 1490. And then Schofield was 1490.
So that's a reflection of density, correct?
Yeah,
Is that what
they
drives that?
created
So
pockets.
for
around
example,
town.
where Mark lives out there in the Wolfies, that would, with the larger lots.
Yeah, but that's
Good.
county.
Oh, I
That's
understand,
kind of-
but as an example, I'm just saying with a subdivision with larger lots like that, then that would be reflected in that.
So it's not based on bedrooms like EPA would use or something.
At the EDU, to classify an EDU it is, but not the cost.
I'll be darned.
But I will tell you that this is actively being discussed because
Right.
from an administrative standpoint, trying to track 13 different EDU locations. Plus, if you look at all the ones that I did the study on, not one has two separate impact fees.
And we should have an annual CPIU lift factor on it every year.
The reason I bring it up, of course, is you got your, with Lewes we've been talking about, how much money will they generate and will they cover the cost of the treatment plant?
Right,
Factor it in.
and so Earl and I had a conversation offline. And we got to talking about where does all the money come from, or at least my question in my mind, I didn't really verbalize it very well. Where does all the money come from that Hans has to do all these things? How much of it comes from the cumulative
You can go to
banking of this versus fees versus grants versus whatever?
You can go do a simple Google search for Sussex County's financials and you can see exactly where their money lies.
So the question to me, and this is your game, board members, is, if you change the connection fees, does it dramatically improve your
Financial stability,
financial stability?
it has the ability to. It has the ability.
Or fees really where it matters? I've never really looked at this.
I mean, at the end of the day, it has, you look at, there's a legal step to it because you have existing development agreements in which if you were to say, we're putting that into place and it goes into effect tomorrow. Those developers, not that it matters, but you have those developers that paid $14.90. You say, well, we're gonna create one rate and it's $3,500, then what do you think they're gonna ask?
Yeah.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, you have, call it 2,000 EDUs that are outstanding. Double your rate, you just double your revenue. And that revenue goes back in the system, because if you look at an impact fee is completely set aside in a separate account. And it can only be used for capital projects.
Those are one-time charges.
One time.
Right. But in order to pay for all these things, it's gotta be an all of the above. You just can't have one silver.
Yeah, it's a
bullet.
unified, yeah,
You gotta have,
What do you mean? all
Unit.
of the-
you gotta raise rates, you gotta do everything.
Oh, right, okay.
I mean, so we did the water pipe
Says
assessment study.
banded
Cause you're going down just that deep path. Water assessment study, 50% of your pipe in this town is iron. That replacement is
Yeah.
it's ungodly. It's disgusting how much that is. I mean, Town Road is $4 million. So take Town Road and look.
Did you learn anything from Pilot Town that can make it less, or more efficient, less costly?
Don't put pipes in the Delta right away.
There you go. There you go. Absolutely.
No, in all honesty, there's a lot, you can look at alternative technologies where you do like a CIP liner, but then you have to provide alternative water source during the project. You live in an area where there's not a lot of contractors that like to come into Lewes and do work, because there's a clientele in Lewes that has its own opinion than if you were to work in the county, right? You're tight. There's a lot of people in one place. And there's a lot of people that don't like when you have to do construction, but then they also don't like when you have to deal with rusty water. And so there's a balance between that. And we're going to talk about capital projects in about 2 weeks. And one of the ones is to get out of the Del Dot side of things and look in the heart of towns and look at the side streets on Town Road and start doing projects based off facts.
In your own domain.
Yeah, you do the 4th Street, right? 4th Street from Savannah all the way to Burton. You stub outside the right of way and you can see on every side street what the pipe looks like. And we did that when we did the water pipe assessment study. And that gave us an insight of where the areas of priority need to be.
And GMP has done all that for street work for the city. I know, I've seen some of those.
But the utilities aren't incorporated into.
No, I know, but
yes.
the same engineer is looking at it all, right? They're just charging 2 different entities for the same evaluation.
Yeah.
That's another story.
I said I would call DPW about a water leak on Burton. I forgot till just now.
You just let me know. Is there a water leak on Burton?
Well, there is running water. It's in front of a hydrant.
Yeah.
And I walked by it every day for the last week and I asked my neighbor the other day and she said, no, it's like that all the time now.
Which street is it?
Burton.
Between 4th
It's-
and Johnson?
It's between 3rd and 4th. If you're
Okay.
going from 3rd towards 4th, it's on the right-hand side and it's directly in front of a fire hydrant.
Oh, I know where you're talking
And
about.
it's just running.
I think
When you're at 4th and Burton, like facing Mariners Retreat, you would make a left or right
You would go
towards
Right.
Johnson or towards 3rd.
towards 3rd.
And it's
And so if you're going that way, it would be on your left.
on your
left-hand
left.
side.
I think there might
Right in
actually, I
front of the
noticed
fire
that,
hydrant.
right, but I think that actually might be, I'm wondering if that's not being pumped.
But so that
from
was,
a- I
There's a
think it
lot
might
of
be.
yards pumping
There
water right
is.
now.
Have you noticed
There
that?
is.
I rode my bike,
Well,
I got kind of wet on the way here.
because I went over to a friend's over on Burton and I walked and I said, wow, what is that running water down the
Yeah.
street? And she said, it's been like that for a while.
Right, I walked by there just the other day. And I saw that water also, I observed that. I think it might be a sump pump that is pumping water out to the curb.
Take a walk down Pilot Town Road or Guild.
But for days?
Yes,
I mean, they will
This
pump
house-
for days.
This
Yeah.
house right here, I go for a walk every day. It pumps every day, every day.
Well, then maybe there's not a water leak.
So don't
Yeah.
at this time of year.
Okay,
Have a taste of it. Tell them.
Yeah,
Barbara, where are we at?
Yeah, so
Okay.
Yeah.
Where we're at is
that's something.
in preparing the report. I have some
Two
questions.
brand new houses there.
First of all,
Are you on Burton?
do we want to make recommendations in the report, or do we just want to lay out what we've looked at and what the implications of the options are?
Okay.
That's number one.
I
Number
can take a
two,
picture and send it to you if you want.
do we have consensus that Aqua Narita is the way to go if we do option 1 or 2? So those are two big questions that I have as the report gets written. And I open that up
To the floor.
for your, yeah.
So, I've been wrestling with similar questions for the last 3 meetings. Maybe it's just me, the further along that we get, I realize we need a lot more information to be able to answer maybe either of these 2 questions. I mean, to be able to say, we found, I mean, the stuff that guys were talking about at the beginning of the meeting today. Sounds like this Aqua Narita stuff is legit. You know, it actually could work quite well. And this is why I asked this question about decision criteria. You know, I guess I've been drinking enough of the Kool-Aid in this room. It all seems really reasonable. I don't have a sense of the money. That's why I keep asking all these questions about the money. But outside of the money, in every public meeting where I've spoken about this wastewater treatment facility, my number one consideration has been water quality. And Aqua Narita sounds like it legitimately can answer that challenge.
I believe so.
And it could do it in a pretty tight, perhaps tighter footprint than what we do now. It could possibly be used to. It could go into the existing site concurrent with the site operating in its present mode. Those are all really big pluses. It seems very reasonable to me. The only issue is how we can make this place, if we were to option one, make this place cost effectively resilient to sea level rise, right?
Yes.
Maybe I'm missing something. And that's also access to the site. Obviously, it's all been talked about. When we get to the idea of greenfield development of something on maybe on the other side of the road or some of these other locations we've been kicking around today. To me, that opens a can of worms that we weren't really here to really talk about. I mean, maybe I got it wrong, but there's other factors there.
Kind of gets into the second alternative in the report that we received from the company.
Right, option two.
Looking for another.
But that was a scary alternative with 200 acres or whatever that number was for, I mean, it just blew that option right out of the water. So we have to have 200 acres of irrigation. Right.
So maybe a thing to do is to ask the board to spend some money. Say to the board, we think we've found a technology that could work at the current site or some new site here in Lewes. And we'd like to spend some money. I'll say $75,000, just for a discussion purposes, to estimate what a new site should be. You know, a new site, Slay Avenue. And or the Kennedy property. Just pick that.
You're saying spend that money on feasibility studies for those particular properties?
You know, re-estimate option one or two to say, what if we built it over at the Kennedy property and water sewer? How much would that be?
Right, different parameters for option two.
Yeah, and then how much more or less would it be to convert this one, the existing one, on the existing site, because you would reuse more equipment, but you would not, you would have to do some maybe different things on the flood and access.
Well, the big difference would be your MPDS permit. I mean, that's big.
Do you have a sense of what it costs to review it? You know, we've been kicking around the idea.
Your EIS study would be what? 400?
I was gonna say $500,000 to $1 million, depending on what you needed to do.
You asked me what the weather was. I'm so glad they got the expertise.
And I'm low on it then, but I would say just your study alone, trying to identify an outfall, evaluate, water assimilation studies have to be what, a minimum of 18 months still? That's what it was when I was working. I mean, that's a long-term study. You're gonna have water gauges out there. All that data has to be
Would
compiled.
that be the case if the discharge was directly across the canal from the existing discharge?
I asked that question.
That's a question of the state and the political climate, and that's kind of a big unknown. I mean, I don't.
Because we've
Right on the
been,
head. Right on the head.
I would imagine there'd be a way of saying no, because it is on the other side of the stream and maybe there's different flow characteristics over there. You know,
That you
The
still have to
answer-
do a study.
Yeah, the answer was, I don't think you have to do a full blown EIS, but the question of whether or not you're gonna have to do something. In between a full blown and a not full blown is probably likely.
So those numbers you just kicked around between 500K and 1 million, that's for a
That-
full blown EIS.
That's full blown, but then, so,
But what would?
I
what
mean,
comes
I've
out?
seen studies get 18 months, 2 years in, and a site's no longer viable. You have to think about.
As a
that.
result of the study,
Mhm.
yeah.
Because you can't really predict what your, well, first of all, the political climate. And second of all, the results of a water assimilation study.
so this
They're
would,
very
That's why you do
different.
the study.
this
Yeah,
would be the
and-
case if it were at Wolf Neck. It would be the case if it were at the
Yep.
Anywhere
the
but,
drain fields on State Park.
right, right. It would be the case anywhere except for where we are.
Yeah,
Or
except for-
possibly
you
the
have
or land
line
application.
thing across the canal.
You have
or
reason
land
to believe
application.
that you would not run into issues by switching the side where the outfall is currently.
Okay.
There's a fact.
Oh, it's an
basis
impact
because you
to
have
the
one on the other
site.
side. Yeah,
On
you
the
could,
site.
you could sit there and argue and say, okay, I'll do a study, but there's a reason why it was selected in that location. And that would be the hat you would be able to hang your hat on, but again, political climate.
And,
will play.
I don't know when that original permit was granted and, you know.
Yeah.
Things change.
What's the state of the renewal?
We don't have a renewal. I'm operating off the 2023
Extension?
nifties. There is no extension.
Yeah.
I'm operating off the October of 20.
But that's very common.
Yeah.
It's very
I'm assuming 24-25 is when I'll get a response for it. But I don't think, I'm not sure how they would view it, is if they would issue my specific question was, would they issue a brand new permit? Or would they utilize the same permit with different XY coordinates?
So just a renewal,
Essentially a renewal, but
a 5-year renewal.
yeah, and I don't think they're going to look at it as a renewal. They may say it's a renewal, but they may say it's a renewal, and then they'll write into the permit when you renew that you have to do something.
When you change the technology at the site, does that change, does that allow for a review and resetting of the parameters of the permit?
The parameters are at the discharge
Yeah.
point. They're not looking at what's before the discharge point.
Okay, it's literally the receiving water and what it can,
Yes.
okay.
But that suggests there's an advantage to figuring out how to use the existing site.
Or something, I think the existing site or something where you would utilize an outfall directly across. Once you move from there,
Yeah.
All right, so maybe we've talked about this. Sounds like a lot of pipe and I don't know what pipe costs. But you could put the plant up on higher ground on the other side, but run it back to the existing pipe.
Could you?
you could,
Basically, you'd have a lot of pipe. But you could conceivably put up on a higher elevation on the other side of Freeman Highway, like, you know.
No, I see what you're saying.
Here, this
Yeah.
pink and white area. But have, you know,
Have it run.
have it
through
coming-
everything.
have it coming from pump station 8 or whatever it is, over to here and then back to the outfall.
you would, even if you had to pay $500,000 to do that study, it would be cheaper to do the study than it would be to put a bore underneath and loop back
Okay.
around and come back.
Okay, that's good information.
Yeah. Because I mean,
Good
the
questions.
estimate on the bore that we're doing for that new water line,
Yeah.
that project's 2.9 million. And that's
Wow.
in 16-inch.
But that's across the
16 inch.
canal.
Yeah, but what your scenario was, is you're gonna have to go
Onto the
back
road.
across
You have
and
to
then
go
somehow loop back out to the outfall.
I'm not thinking under the canal, I'm thinking in the Freeman Highway.
Yeah, that's not gonna happen.
That's,
Okay, all right.
like where your head's at, but there's
All
no.
right, all right.
I wondered about that too. So
I'm,
that's
I'm
pretty
just a dreamer here.
Well, as far as the question of Aqua Narita versus small batch, I think that all loops back to you. And are you going to staff this plant or is this gonna be subbed out?
Yeah. That's what it comes down to.
Yes.
You're either in the business or you're out of the business.
That's beyond our capability.
Yeah,
That's a board
That's you have
decision.
5 people that need to make the decision if they're in the operations business or they're not. If you're in the operations business, then you're running a plant. If you're not in operations business, then the plant goes away and you become a wholesale customer.
Well, don't you think that question needs to be answered before we get into the nitty gritty of the next, where this is going?
So we talked about this yesterday after the meeting with these folks and said, you're almost at the point where if there was a question on whether or not it made sense to go down one path or the other, it seems like you just need that little bit more information to push you one way or another. So the question is, do you go back to HDR and say to HDR, what would it take to put something together for this site? Doesn't matter which site it is, X or Y. And then you would see a preliminary design of what would go on that site and the cost associated, an estimate, a preliminary estimate that would go with it. And then that would maybe sway you one way or another.
Have you seen enough in you and Mark and maybe Donna? Have you seen enough here to suggest that it might be advantageous to be in the operations business if we had a plant that operated like what we've been hanging around with? Never mind where it is for a second. Let's just talk about the technology and the demands of running that plant.
I think an MBR plant produces very good water, but it takes a lot of effort to do so, and there's a lot of moving parts. I think Aqua puts together a great package. I think that it is cost effective from the utility side. I think the long term going to be cost effective. I think there's merit in still owning and operating a plant. But the question is, the devil's in the details when you look at a contract for a long term. Because once Earl and I have talked about this, once you sign, you are signing for the future.
Signing like with the county.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
you're not reversing.
Right.
It's once that's done, you're decommissioning and once you relinquish that permit, it ain't coming back.
Right, and then you're at maybe not the whim,
Yeah.
but you're riding something that's rolling down the road.
What I believe that there's benefit in interconnection. That's what I believe in.
Option, having flexibility.
Yes. Because you have it on the water side, why don't you have it on the sewer side? If you ever ran into an issue with that plan, what do?
Shut it down.
You can't.
No, but I'm saying if you had the connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You would have to have an alternative, and that alternative is what led us down this discussion.
So, I mean, I what, are there pieces of this operations picture, the way it's being portrayed by our narrator that would say, yeah, it would actually change the thinking at the board level that actually, yeah, we could stay in this business and make it work. I don't know if I'm making myself clear. I've got a lot of stuff flying around in my head right now, but it seems to me this question of being an operator or not could be influenced. I get the sense that there's a bias against continuing to be an operator.
Currently?
Yeah.
I think there's you can have a varying level of opinions, but based off what they have in front of them, which is the GHD report, it's kind of plain as day if you look at that report. And based off what that report's giving you, leaving everything other thing to the side, looking at that report says, do you go in to a floodplain and spend $30 million, 20 or $30 million, knowing what's going on around you? Do you go to the county? Now it's dated because then you have the county option, which is 20 million, but that's really not an option anymore because of the archaeological stuff. I think in the GHD option 2 was never an option because who's going to give you 150 million? the debt service on that's more than what we bring in revenue for the entire utility. So that's off the table. But
There are other option twos that weren't evaluated.
Yeah, I think, and
but they
option
did
one
yeah,
was
one technology. That's what
boosted
they
in
used.
cost
They didn't go
by
into the aqua.
some foolishness in sledgehammer.
And also by the ongoing O&M costs of running the MBR system.
So Austin, completely correct. If you look at that report, the county is by far a better option, but redoing an option one or, you know, a realistic option two changes the perspective. And at least in my view, might allow you to get a better deal with the county, which was sort of sign on to my program or don't. Take it or leave it.
Well, and at $20 million, you're in the ballpark of the Walcott plant. Given some of the earth moving expenditures that they had, I don't know what ours would be, but it seems like you're a lot closer than the scary numbers of ocean outfalls and option two.
You'll still be 35 million into it. By the time you got to decommission and your site work, land acquisition, you'll be 30 million.
And you're hitching yourself to being an operator until the plant makes no more sense. I mean, you gotta pay debt service on it, so you're gonna be an operator for that length of time. Unless you're gonna sell it to somebody else to do it.
I mean, it truly comes down to the question, which is you're either in the operations or you're out of the operations or the treatment business. Because once you go down either path, you really don't back off of it.
So if we back out and look at the whole BPW. Does the money raised in sewer stay in sewer expenditures, or does it all come together and get moved around? Like, does this end up subsidizing other operations in BPW?
No, sewer does not subsidize any operation.
Do others subsidize
Still got
sewer?
pump stations.
Yeah, I mean, electric is your bread and butter, but everything's bifurcated out. Each one has its own, everything is booked
There's
into
kind of
a
walls
10, a
between
20, a
them.
30, and a 99. 10, 20, 30, 40, 99, which is electric, water, sewer, storm, admin. So everything, all the restricted funds are separated out by utility, all revenue separated out by utility.
So if you can't make it
Typically-
pencil out for the sewer number, whatever that number is, then it doesn't make sense.
Sewer's an expensive utility. Electric, look, yeah, I don't like to brag.
Winter is coming.
Well, no, I don't like to brag. Did anybody experience an outage during that 50, 60, 70 mile an hour wind?
I don't know.
And that's like 80% overhead. It may not look good, but it's a stout system. And that was because they put money into it in the 2008 timeframe. They spent 10, $15 million and they put it in, and I mean, undergrounding, like we're doing a lot of underground projects. It's the same thing that's going to happen on water. Because you're looking at one aspect of the BPW. If you look at the capital budget that's coming up, it's $35 million over 5 years.
Across the agency.
Yeah. And that doesn't take on but maybe 5-10% of that water assessment study. So if you have 50% poly pipe, plastic pipe, you're gonna take on another 5%, maybe 10. It's just the cost, because once you go over to the beach side and you got to go through dewatering.
Right, when you're saying undergrounding, I'm thinking not on the other side.
Yeah, and stormwater is gonna be huge.
Yes, it is.
MS4, when it comes to the eastern part of the county,
I heard a story about a new resident over on the beach.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's
So
Back
Is
back
MS
where,
yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
so
go back
it
here.
sounds to me like the recommendation of this committee will be that we hire someone to look at cost and feasibility of options 1 and 2. And that we believe that these are viable options that should be looked at, and in addition, that the technology we've agreed upon is also something the county should look at. How does that sound for conclusions? And maybe I can get if someone can help me with what I need to ask, maybe I can get a cost proposal from HDR. Yeah,
And I think those are all reasonable statements.
What is it that you'd ask the county again? What do you mean by that, Liz?
ask county to think about the Aqua Narita process at their location.
At their
for Wolf.
location.
Yeah.
Okay, and a good reason to do that is to decrease our future operation costs.
Yes.
And
Yes.
theirs, yeah.
And
As
theirs,
well
yes,
as, theirs, yes, but
Well, it might be a great thing to do down in Dewey Beach and places like that, where there isn't much
yeah, land,
land.
right.
But
Not
even
really
this,
necessary.
with what's going on there, they may have less land than they wanna have.
True.
Right, so,
Sooner than we.
yeah, so the
Yeah.
possibility is maybe it actually helps them in different ways as well.
I really like what you were saying, Mark, earlier about the distinction when Earl asked you about what would you do at Wolf Neck. I mean, if I understood what you said, the plant that's at Wolf Neck works great for the irrigation system that's at Wolf Neck right now. But if you were to somehow have to turn off that irrigation, you didn't say this, this is what I was thinking. If you were to have to turn off that irrigation system and you couldn't put the fixed pipe system in and you had to somehow find a surface discharge, there wouldn't really be much reason not to go with a system like Aqua Narita, because it would be so much better at delivering cleaner water.
well, that's right, and its operational costs have been shown to be less than other, and that's the real benefit, because we're helping with the operation costs. There are, you can get the nice clean water from a lot of myriad types of sewage treatment.
But the operational costs are
But the
really
one that
distinguished.
has the smallest operational costs, and it seems to me, based on what we've been studying here, that
Sorry.
the innovative system has an opportunity for a very low operation cost.
What fraction, been so long ago, what are we talking compared to the current operational costs? Okay. That's all in.
I like what you said,
electricity,
Barbara,
Yeah,
you know,
people power, whatever.
A quarter to a fifth.
That's. I mean, could we, if all else fails with options 1 and 2. What leverage do we have to say we'd really like to see something like this, if there needs to be additional capacity built at Wolf Neck to support our needs at Wolf Neck? We would like to see this lower.
And
cost. Sure.
you bring the regulators along, because at the end of the day, if there's a report out there that says that the Lewes BPW's facility is one of the most vulnerable facilities that are out there, then you put the regulators at a point where they put their money where their mouth is. You got a $35 million debt and it has to be serviced by the residents. You make enough noise, you get money.
What
You
does,
go down
what,
like a lobbyist.
if we want to, what allows us to bend the thinking of Sussex County on how they treat the sewage at Wolf Neck?
Yeah, that was
You
basically.
know, because if they in effect get our MPDES permit, for instance,
Right.
that opens up a bunch of growth that Sussex County, I'm sure, would love to have.
Could they use our discharge point from Wolf Neck?
No,
It wasn't
if
offered.
one was, it was discussed, but if they were able to, in as long a time it takes to get a revamped MPDS permit, they can say, well, that one's not there anymore. We're gonna open up one here, and we have a 2 MGD discharge here. We also have the spray irrigation, so now we have a 6 MGD treatment plant here at Wolf Neck rather than a 4. You know, those types of what allows us to have pressure, if we want to, on them to modify their thinking in a way that we think is advantageous.
right.
Decrease operational costs and environmental sustainability. If I could put it,
Yes.
you know, those,
I think if the board was an owner, you would have a say in it. If the board is a wholesaler, or a wholesale customer, then
Would,
it's, the devil will be in whatever that rate is.
and,
Thousand gallon.
according to the way I read the existing report, option 3 doesn't tell us anything about how they're going to handle the wastewater. They're just going, you give it to us, we'll take care of it for you. Don't worry.
Well, no, I mean, originally it was set up to be a bigger plant to discharge the water through the existing. I guess it's, what is it? What's the
different
what's
spray and
yeah.
a wetland system?
Yeah.
Right.
Is the spray irrigation subject to
But
an
it doesn't
NDF?
say what their treatment plant's gonna be. It doesn't say that they're gonna stay with
That uses
lagoons.
discharge.
But you have
Land
to.
application.
So
you
as soon as you put a
land
pipe in the river, you have
application
the nifties, but there's no, so it's a way of avoiding it to have the irrigation. You don't have to mess with all that.
Right,
Well, you still have to get a permit.
Yeah.
From
Through Denver.
yeah, but
Through
it's,
Denver.
it's a lot different than getting one for.
Mhm.
nifty's permit.
But my sense is when we were on that tour, there's not really enough room to dramatically increase the capacity of that irrigation system in that location.
Well, notwithstanding this archaeological stuff, if that weren't in this conversation. There is, if you go to solid state sprinklers, you could spread out into corners that the center pivots don't reach into.
Even
You
with a slowly rising water table.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. As a matter of fact, the geotechnical work and the soils work that you do to get approvals show how much you can put on the land to make sure that the water table doesn't reach within 20 inches of the surface. So that you have.
Oh, it's basically pushing the water back down.
Well, not necessarily, it's just the percolation rates and everything are looked at and you make sure that you're not over irrigated.
So when we were on the tour, I asked what the operator that I was walking with, if there were any areas of the irrigation zone that they'd had trouble with, and he said, actually, yeah, there were areas that never perked the way they were supposed to. And I just assume there will be more of those areas as time goes
Well,
by.
Well, I was gonna put trees out there and walking paths.
Yeah, so you get a lot more evapotranspiration and.
Okay, fair enough.
things
All right.
like that, so.
All right.
But, you have big circles there and the land isn't in big circles, so.
Right.
There are possibilities to go into some corners that are viable in terms of the ability to receive water. There may be areas that he's talking, and it has to do with the type of apparatus that they're using as well, not to mention the crop that they have. And the fact that they're trying to get rid of water as deep into the winter as they possibly can, or as early in the spring when the rains are coming. So there's a lot of nuances to it.
So do I have a volunteer to prepare a draft request for proposal to HDR? Send to me that I can send to them.
I don't know that I have.
I'm thinking Mark.
Details and experience.
I got it.
Thinking honest. I'd be glad to give it a shot, but I really.
Yeah.
You know what I would probably do? I'd probably call up Brandon and say, give me an idea of what a proposal looks like to do
Yeah,
this.
that's what-
And he'd send us something to fill in the blanks.
That sounds
I'd
reasonable.
probably start with that. I don't know if Brandon's gonna be the one doing it since he's based out of, I think he's.
Well, no, I understand,
Yeah.
but he'd be a connection to HDR. They've got offices all over the country, so.
Yeah. I
Um,
think it's-
he would either turn us on to somebody local or help us with it right away. The other thought that comes to mind is, do we want to ask him? We would have to point out the other areas if it's more
Yes.
than just the existing site that you'd want them to look at.
Yeah.
And so
I think you get,
Schley Avenue and
yeah, you can give those three. Those would be the
Schley Avenue, the open lot.
next to Freedom
and,
Highway.
yeah.
And the existing site.
The existing site.
Yeah.
So nothing at
Right,
the
the
state
rest of
level.
the sort of speculative ones have been kicking around. I mean, I think that opens a bit of the can of worms at least.
And you'll have more money into try and pipe it down Second Street that we just tore up. Or front. I mean, we just tore that up and that sewer's 20-something feet deep, so.
I hate to say this, but I don't know that it's worth doing it because I think the least expensive option is gonna be going to the county. And I don't know all of the ramifications of what going to the county means at this point in time. But it's gonna be hard to beat someone saying, yeah, all you gotta do is build a pipe to us.
Depends if you're an owner and it depends if you're a wholesale
This is,
customer.
this is why I've been asking so many of the questions in the latter part of this meeting.
Is there any way to get the board just to make that decision prior to proceeding on?
Which one, whether they want to be in the
Yes.
Well,
No.
but so that's why I've been asking the questions I've been asking. Are there things that we've learned in this process that would help us throw kind of a stick in the spokes to that logic? To say, hey, wait a minute, before we jump into what clearly has been the outcome of the GHD report, maybe we need to take a step back and really, for fiduciary responsibility, maybe as much as anything else, take a finer look at 1 and 2. I mean, how do we sell this? This is why I asked the question about what the board's sentiment is right now. How do we sell this? I feel like we kind of need to sell this.
Well, you got a cheat code, he's sitting right there and
Yeah.
she's sitting right there.
It's half the, it's half the crowd.
Well, I think the point is, you want to find something with an overall, that is a reasonable option with a low operating cost. So then you say to the county, we have a rock bottom, 2 guys have to come to work twice a week.
And we got a deal for you.
We're willing to pay that much to the county. And if you persist in your Cro-Magnon treatment approach, that's interesting, but we're willing to pay twice as much as these 2 guys cost us. And we'll do the collection and ship to you. And negotiate. And then I think you negotiate for a piece of essentially the management of that facility. And I don't know how that exactly works, but I do know
You
a
are
guy.
now responsible for anything that goes, you are responsible for anything that goes wrong.
With the whole system.
Yeah.
Not just the Lewes piece, the whole system.
But you get a board seat or something over there.
So something goes wrong and it's in the county's hands, then, Lewis City people are gonna say, well, you should have never given it to the county.
Right.
Anyway,
Yeah.
you're damned one way or another.
Yeah, 100%.
So,
You'll put it next to Henlopen Bluff and Henlopen Bluff will be pissed if there's a wastewater treatment plant across the highway.
Or across the
They'll be
canal.
thrilled.
So,
I think that you might want to tread lightly when you're talking about negotiating with the county, because the scope of this committee is just to look at options 1 and 2.
Fair enough.
yes, good point.
good point.
Good point.
She always.
I'm just saying,
I-
if you have a realistic option, 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Your position versus negotiation. And the fact is, a year ago, about this time, we got a report. The most favored option doesn't exist anymore. It's gonna be different.
And is that coming out? Do we know that? when
Uh,
it got canceled?
I'm gonna assume like first, second week in February. That's what I'm gonna assume.
The thing that was supposed to be yesterday.
Yes.
So,
With the archaeological thing,
No.
I know it was like an update on the Oshtuffle, right?
Yeah.
GHD. personnel forms.
so, options 1 and 2 probably need to be restudied, and option, whatever that was, 3, I forget its number, if I ever knew it, isn't possible. So now there's an option 3 Foxtrot.
What are the bullet points that we can put in this document or presentation that will compel them not to just brush aside the idea of reworking up and wanting to.
So I'm not smart enough to do it, but to me, you've got to have a parity comparison between our current plant we have today, plant that the county's gonna have, and the plant that we could have with newer technology. And literally go all the way down, workers, you know, chemicals, you name it, treatment water, how it comes out, and literally have a parity comparison to say, here's these three things together, and here's the best option, and hopefully, you know, it's something we've been looking at here today. That's it. So there's the math. Now I think you've got to have someone from Aqua Rita, someone that's actually run the plant, like our friends did out there, and have them either here or online answering questions. And I love Press, right? And he is incredibly talented in wastewater treatment. And he could ask questions that I would never be able to ask or never be able to understand. Those people can go toe for toe. And by the way, if it's not a good decision, then we shouldn't do it.
Right.
But
Right.
let's get really smart people in the room with a criteria. Here's how we came up with it. Here's what we think the advantages are. And let's have a brawl. I mean, I'm being a little facetious there,
Right.
but let's figure it out.
Roll up the sleeves, put the real data on the table, get some real discussion going.
And I think there's an opportunity to say, you know what, based on what we've learned that day, you know, here's some things that we think we can do fairly quickly. Get the approval to do that if it costs money or doesn't cost money, whatever it is, and go forward with it or not.
Well, maybe you have a special education meeting. You invite the board, the public, anybody who's interested. And kind of do a repeat. And so on, and then the question is, do you want to spend some money figuring this out? You know, to get to your three-phase.
Do a real comparison, yeah,
Because
we can do it.
I don't think we could get to your final decision sheet without spending some money by somebody.
So if you could contact that guy at HDR and say, we'd like to have you look at this, this, and this. What would it cost us? Can you do it? What are your recommendations on proceeding?
Just to get an
Bring
estimate.
bring that back to the board and see if the board wants to move forward with that expense. And have some real hard and fast. pictures
And
of what it might look
who is
like.
it that you would call?
The HDR representative Brandon that we were talking about
Hey,
earlier.
Joe, I'll have to call you back.
He's
Okay.
he's the engineer.
Because-
Yes.
That was the guy in the red shirt.
Yeah,
He was the guy that was running it was in the plant or that was Aqua Rita.
no, he is a independent engineer
Okay.
who
He designed it.
designed
Got that.
designed the plant and did it through this design build
Yeah.
methodology that he touts quite a bit, but that part of it is interesting, but that's not what is necessarily
Yeah.
important to us at the time. Ours is, he would come to the site, HDR personnel would come to the site, look at it, see what there is. Oh yeah, we could put a tank here, we could build this up, we could do that over here, we could reuse this tank, we tear this building down, whatever. Then he'd go and look at the place across the canal, say, oh yeah, this would be like a green site, you'd need to pump water from here to get it to right out. That alternative. And then he looked at Schley Avenue maybe and said, okay, go tear this building down and do this.
Does anybody know much about the guy that's coming in to replace Hans? What is back? Anybody know him?
Have they selected someone?
Well, it's my understanding, that, I forget his last name, Mark, who's worked with Hans, has been groomed for the position.
What's his last name again?
Forget, Mark, do you know his last name?
It's not Mark Prouty, is it?
Hey, good choice.
Thank you for saying that, but no.
Yeah, sometimes a new person comes in, they want to change it up a little bit sometimes.
Well,
Well, they also.
Huh?
have
Parker?
pictures of
No.
the leadership.
because I asked the same question when I heard that Hans had announced his retirement.
Is this fella coming up?
Mike.
Mike, that was Mark.
Is he in Sussex County already, or is he coming from outside?
Yes, he's in Sussex County already, and it's my understanding politically that he's been groomed to take over for Hans.
Okay.
Now, whether that happens or not, because it certainly hasn't been announced.
Mhm.
And Hans announced his retirement, what, 3-4 weeks ago?
Yeah, he was saying in January,
Yeah.
last month, I think.
And I'm sure he has a couple year exit strategy built in.
I had the impression that had we been successful with the constructed wetlands, he was gonna stick on until that was all done. He really seemed interested in doing that.
Yeah, I was curious to learn more about that because in my design of constructed wetlands in the past, it still is a flow through, and ultimately that which doesn't drain is discharged. You still have an MPDES permit for them.
Right, it's kind of more of a
And
policy.
I was getting the impression from Hans that that wasn't the case here, that all of the water would drain through this wetland. And so I'm puzzled by it, and it wasn't pointed out anywhere.
So there's an infiltration component to the using the wetlands, but there is also a pass through.
Okay,
Because they're not, for it to work, it has to hold and release at a certain rate, but that rate doesn't include, big events.
right, yes.
So you don't have the
Right.
variability built into
Right.
that.
You can
That's what
Why
they,
it
that's,
they would maintain those ponds
Right.
to
that would. be
take up the
pass through,
variability.
yeah.
And I also thought they were going to have a canal discharge.
Well, that's what the discharge would be from
Yeah.
the wetlands is,
Yes,
and that's what I wasn't sure about. I mean, it's gonna take them forever to get that canal discharge from it.
anyway, we look at, our plant's gonna be paid off by the time something happens.
I'm so far removed from this question, given all that we've talked about with Aqua Narita. Remind me. Is it feasible to rebuild? Is there a different way of doing option one? Never mind Aqua Narita, where we can really protect it. We can get ourselves out of the high water.
You mean at the existing plant site?
Yes, that's
At our.
Yes, I believe there is. You could go with the standard technology there, you'd have costs.
You just
involved.
jack the building up and raise the height of the tank?
Yeah, I would, you could stick with the oxidation ditch, you would, do away with the. Types of filters that are on the end of it, you would modify the screens to something much more palatable. You'd still have your sludge handling. But there are other alternatives to make use of existing facilities there. I think there's a real possibility of using a lot of the existing tankage in a Narita system. But you could have regular batch reactors rather than not with Narita batch reactors. You could have, you can have an oxidation. So I remember the very first treatment plant I designed was on a small site for Wellsboro, Pennsylvania. And it had a trickling filter, what a trickling filter type of treatment plant is. It's just a pile of rock and you pee the water on top of it and water drains down through it out to the stream. You chlorinated and then out to the stream, and it doesn't make real good water, but old school. Well, all that was going on in the middle. And I just built a big oxidation ditch that wrapped all the way around the outside of it. It had a platform over the top. I sent you a picture of that one. And we were able to build this whole treatment plant on the small site all the way around what was going on. So my point being, there's always a way to manipulate and get treatment. Batch reactors had come into play back in the days of 1979. But
Yeah,
I think getting HDR, they could come out and they could specifically say, do this, this, and this. And they'd have to listen to me yell at them.
I mean, the Walcott case, as you guys described, it, is a very compelling
It really is. It really is.
story for ways of reusing our site.
I think the reuse of our site is very feasible. Personally. Access to it. Right, as I've said in my memo to you, access is gonna change over time.
Well, I just saw him draw the new access on a map.
Yeah. Through the trail.
Yeah. And even coming, at some point in time, you're gonna come over the Freeman Bridge and there's gonna be water there. And so, right there where the bike path is, you could turn and come into the treatment plant. You'd have to raise the bike path a little bit, right, bikes
Yeah.
could still use it, but there's not gonna be anything up beyond that. You're not gonna be able to go to the state park.
Yeah, that'll be a while.
Well, it will be a while.
And it will be
before
mostly during
before
floods
that
this year.
happens, you're going to see high tide impacting access first, and so
Yes.
access during low tide
Thank
would be
you.
what you're gonna want.
Right.
So there's stages that we could plan for and reuse that existing site.
Yes.
So anyway,
Look
the
at
the biggest thing is be able to get solids out of the place, and that's what you'll need.
we don't have enough information with the county to make a decision either, right? So what we need to do is present something that is logical and something that's has a lot of good things behind it. We need to find out what more there is or what more there isn't. And then give that final pick.
I think that's right.
I don't know with Hans retiring, if he's gonna answer any questions,
That'd be-
you think he will?
Yeah.
There you go, Todd.
Barbara, with the outline that you sent and the notes that you sent out, do you want the rest of the committee to send you notes so you can compile and then we can just?
Thank you. Thank
All
you
right.
for bringing us back into focus. Yeah. Daphne put together an outline and I did a little bit of work on it. That's the one that's called draft report. This one. So we're kind of collaborating on it so far. She said she will work on it some more this weekend. And send me her additions. She's been going through the watch the meetings on Zoom kind of thing since she couldn't get released from work for it, but I would appreciate thoughts, and I had there's this other document here, random notes. I started putting together some of the things I think should go in the report, where to slip them in, and the table of contents she provided, I haven't figured out yet, but I would also like to ask all of you on this random notes thing to fill in a little bit of your impressive background, so we can let people know we have a pool of experts that have been looking at this. We're not just, citizen A, B, and C, where we do have some technical background.
But it's not just the smart people in this room, it's also the people we talk to.
Well, that's true. And so there will be a list of the people.
I think some of them in this meeting is gonna be online or however we do it. It's gonna be-
Yeah,
I like the sound of this guy the guy in the red shirt,
yeah,
We
Brandon.
just call it red shirt guy.
red shirt guy.
Redshirt freshman.
He was a good communicator.
Yes.
He clearly knows how to put it together.
What he did for us yesterday online was really excellent. For good answers.
And the sooner I can have your input.
So. I'm assuming that you guys decided that you want to put in a request to have a special meeting just for this, correct? All right.
Yeah.
We'll work on that. Do you want to set a meeting before? How soon do you want to meet again?
Okay. If we're taking this off the agenda for the next board meeting, then, and if you people will commit to getting stuff to me, I'm thinking I will have a decent draft the week of the 22nd. And I would like to have a meeting to review that. at that time. Maybe the 25th or the 20, but probably the 25th.
25th for the final presentation?
For
For the
a meeting
review.
before. Do you want to bank on the fact that we're gonna get a special date, or do you wanna?
Our charter says January 31st, so
Okay.
that would leave us until the following Wednesday to have the report.
I think there's some benefit in meeting the target.
Yes, I do too. I would like to have the report, you know, at least a written report to the board, but the special meeting can and probably should occur after they've had time to review.
So,
The
so
report.
you want our comments by what, say the 16th, the 17th? If we have everything to you by the 16th or 17th, that gives a full week, is that good?
Yes,
All right, so I'm setting myself a deadline of the 16th.
okay.
But it's already the 11th.
I sent an email out to Brandon. right, so.
Oh, good.
So we'll meet again on the 22nd, the 24th.
Drawing of the treatment.
So what was the next meeting date, the 23rd?
Yes.
Huh?
You're moving too quick.
I'm not. So
This can be
depending
scaled
on
from-
when they say the special meeting is gonna be, if it's the
This is all
30th or the
fixed.
31st.
Want
I mean,
you to
that's probably when
start
they're
with it?
gonna wanna do it,
We wanted to make sure you were back from vacation, Sharon. That's why we.
Ah,
but if you're gonna wanna have your report to supply to them a week's notice. So if they say the 31st, you should have your report by the 24th.
oh, really?
Yes, so that means you're gonna wanna have your next meeting prior to that.
I
Is
mean,
the
you
special meeting-
probably, you probably finagle it a little bit.
Well, wait, do you think the special meeting has to happen before the 31st?
This is why I
I
think
think
the
they have to have
report,
the option.
the report has to be given to the board before the 31st.
Mhm.
Whether you schedule the meeting on the 31st.
Right.
Or somewhere along those, that's the only thing. I can't speak for the rest of them. What would you say? The
Look, I even said in that meeting that if we're on a good path and and we need extra time, we should be able to get it. And I said, I'm sure this board will allow us that opportunity. That I said in the public meeting.
That's sort of my feeling, I mean,
Now, would it be better not to ask for it? Yes. It'd
Yes.
be better not to ask for it.
You know,
Well, let's say we get them the report and we get them,
Give
this
us a
is
draft.
what happens when,
Yeah, you can do
When-
that.
that's what they were looking
they
at.
don't answer the phone for 3 hours.
Aim to get a
You have more
draft.
friends than I have.
No, customers,
Wow.
installers.
yeah, my goal was looking at the charter. We have to submit a report by January 31st.
Correct. So the question on the table is what is the next date that we're gonna get together with the draft, you're gonna have a draft report?
Yeah. I can't see me having it before the 23rd. Now, I'll probably be doing most of the work the 20th and the 21st on the weekend. So if people can get their views to me by the 18th, that would actually be sufficient.
Yeah, I put down the 16th. So
Yeah.
a meeting on the 23rd then?
I think so.
Okay.
23rd.
I don't know if we're gonna be able to do that. Sharon's gonna be here.
Oh. Oh, who's gonna be
Listen, I'm missing all the meetings that week.
You are. It actually just so happens that every single time we have to have a meeting, Sharon gets out of the meeting, so she doesn't have to do the board packs. So then Kim and I have to do board packs.
It's not stupid when I plan.
The chicken tickets are cheaper.
Sounds well deserved.
Yeah, ask her where she's going.
Or
You know,
this drawing.
It's a public meeting.
Shit, bro.
Not of the
Come on,
existing
John,
treatment.
universe.
It's doesn't have the buildings and
Sounds
It's the
awesome.
last
That's,
one we
that's
have.
built up over
About that
top of
time,
it.
it's supposed to be, I think it's
Sort
maybe
of,
just after
yeah.
that. It's
Okay.
supposed to
Do
be
you have any
super
idea
cold.
what the scale?
If you're
is
talking
on
about
this
Kansas, my
No,
wife was
because I
reading off other
enlarged
prices
it
for
on
next
my
week in Denver.
calendar.
It's like
Yeah.
-9.
What time do you
Who
wanna
is it
do
from?
on the 23rd?
It's from GMP.
1:30.
7 o'clock at night.
Is that-
I mean, yeah, these,
Oh, that's
these
good.
Yes.
What?
Wait a minute, what am
Do
I?
you have drawings of the existing treatment?
all right,
that I could-
1:30,
I have the as-built.
23rd, it's on the
Yeah.
calendar.
1:30, okay.
1:30 to the 23rd.
Yes.
Great,
Do you want a paper copy or do you want
paper copy.
you want paper?
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's fine.
Do you have it already? Don't make it especially.
Did I print a paper copy off for you?
The full scale one?
Yeah.
Did, yeah,
Do you have one?
yeah, I do, yes.
Yeah.
Let me steal it from you. I just want to make a couple of calculations on yards of material that might be available.
I think it's at the very back.
All right,
I put one.
Thank you.
yeah, 1:30.
And you have a wonderful time. We'll think of you.
Thanks.
I move to
I
adjourn.
paid
Great,
one.
thank you. I'll reach you.
At the meeting virtually. The expectation is you'll be virtually at the
Barbara, would you entertain my motion to adjourn?
If we have a second,
Second.
okay, all in favor?
I'm
Alright.
opposed.
Thank you.
I want to go on the record.